Chapter 1. Intro. One day, upon waking up from bed after the departure of Irina, Issei was greeted by a screen only he could see. A message explained to him that he received the system known as the ultimate Gacha System. At first, Issei thought he was dreaming, but he never woke up no matter what he did, whether to slap himself or pinch his arm as painfully as possible. Issei's only explanation was that he was awake. As Issei spun the gacha wheel, he didn't expect much since 80% of the wheel was filled with trash. However, the message he got from the system shocked him. Congratulations! The user received Divine Sword Knowledge. God. The user may access the reward within the inventory. However, all this happened when Issei was 10 years old. Now, he's 17 years old, 7 years after the ultimate gacha's arrival. Issei has accumulated so many items and power over the years that could propel him to the top of the supernatural world if he chooses to do so. Warning. Most of the main story may not be understandable without reading the auxiliary first, unless you've read John Arc, Ultimate Gacha. This is a multiverse story. Tags: High School DxD, Overpowered, Multiverse, Gacha, Magic, Harem, Action, Adventure, Comedy, System, R-18. Chapters are between 1K-2K. Ch1 of 74 next. Chapter 1. Hyodo Issei is an ordinary man. Albeit a bit too perverted for his own good. Or, that's who he was meant to be if he didn't receive the ultimate gacha system 7 years ago and instead met a perverted old man. But thankfully, the gacha system arrived in time. Issei didn't have to use the idea of the perverted old man as a coping mechanism for Irina's departure. Hence, he avoided his destiny, but he gained the ability to write his own. Currently, our hero is in the kendo club having a match with the captain. It would look intense to many who are watching the match, and both are equally matched. However, that's not the case for people like Kiba Yuto, who is far more experienced in a real fight. No, they could see just how dominating Issei was with the sword. Kiba himself felt inferior to Issei. Issei and Murayama were in a standoff. As the round started, Murayama couldn't even see Issei move. No, she was instantly hit, giving Issei the point. They reset their position, and when the round started, Murayama was again hit without her seeing what Issei did. "Issei, we love you. You're amazing," shouted one of the girls from the kendo club. "Captain, you can't let him beat you. You're our invincible captain," another from the kendo club shouted. Kiba and Akeno watched the show. Even though Issei wasn't part of the club, many were supporting him over their own captain. Then again, Akeno was thinking of something perverted in her mind. Era. I wonder what it would be like to dominate such a man, Akeno thought. It would be some spicy moment at the least. Hehehe. Such mastery over the sword, Kiba thought. Even as a devil, I could barely follow the movement of his sword. His control is beyond me. If I were to have a match with him, I would certainly lose. Unless I use my night piece boost. 10 minutes later, the match between Issei and Murayama was over. Not once in the match did Murayama get a single point. She was disappointed in herself, but she was determined to improve her skills. "Good match, Murayama," Issei said. He smiled at her and shook her hand. "If you even want to train for an upcoming match, don't hesitate to ask me for some advice." "Will do, Issei," Murayama said. She then sighed. "It was such a shame. It's such a shame that you're a man. If you were a girl, that would have been a wonderful thing as you could propel our kendo club to the top of the national tournament. Another shame is that you couldn't be our club advisor since you're a student like myself. I still don't get why you don't open up the club for both males and females," Issei said. Though, he slightly understood it. "I get that some guys could be creeps and would join just to perv on you girls, but I think it would benefit the club in the future if you opened it to both genders." As great as that sounds, Murayama said. She was in a dilemma, but she didn't change her mind. Many of the girls in the club are uncomfortable with most of the guys in this school since they were the type to enroll for the sole purpose of being a pervert, thinking they would have a higher chance of getting it on with a girl here. "It's a shame, but understandable," Issei said. He nodded his head as he spoke. "Anyway, if you need any help, don't hesitate to ask me. I'm willing to teach you a few things." After the match, Kiba and Akeno headed to the orc room, where Rias was doing some paperwork, and Kaneko was eating some sweets. Kiba and Akeno wanted to give their evaluation of Issei as a candidate for a night piece. As Rias was doing her paperwork, Kiba and Akeno arrived in the club room. Rias looked away from her work and looked at the new arrival in the room. "Bucko, we have our evaluation of the night piece candidate," Akeno said. She was giggling to herself as she said it. The idea of her whipping Issei in bed is still clear in her mind. "I would say he is cut above Kiba in terms of skills." "I concur with Akeno's evaluation," Kiba said. He sighed at his own lower level of skill compared to a regular person. His technique and speed with the sword are outstanding. If I was to have a match with him, I would lose 100% of the time unless I was to use my ability as a devil and the boost of the night piece. "Oh? That's quite an evaluation," Rias said. She then took off the glasses she wears, not because she has an eyesight problem, but because it helps her concentrate. "Anything else to note?" "I want to do things to him in bed," Akeno said. She then started giggling again. "I want to see how great that body of his can hold against my whip." "Akeno, I wasn't talking about things that happen in your head," Rias said with a sigh. Akeno is her right hand, but sometimes she just sigh. "I was asking for things of note about Issei. Benefits that we can use to invite him into the peerage." "Oh, I have nothing else," Akeno said. You wouldn't mind if I spend some time with him whether he accepts being in the peerage or not, do you?" "As long as it doesn't affect your work, I don't mind," Rias said. Looking at Akeno, Rias had to make sure to warn her. "But make sure you don't take things too far. I know of your sadist kink. You being a devil is different from those of regular humans. Make sure you don't hurt him." Era, I won't do things without his approval," Akeno said. She then giggled once more. This made Rias sigh as she knew there was almost nothing a man wouldn't allow when Akeno seduces them. "So? When are you going to approach him?" "I plan to do so in a few days," Rias said. She then looked at all the paperwork on her table and gestured towards it. "All of these aren't going to finish themselves." "I told you I could help you with it," Akeno said. She was always willing to help Rias when she was in need. "I can do some of the paperwork as well as you do it." "I know, Akeno," Rias said. She then sighed. "But that's not the problem. I'm working on all of this paperwork as only Sona and I can view them." "That's a shame," Akeno said. She then went to an area within the room and started making tea for Rias. Once she was done, she gave the tea to Rias. "Here, this will help you relax a bit." With Issei, he was standing on a bridge watching the sunset. He does this every time he heads home. Issei loves to watch the sunset as he finds it calming. While Issei was watching the sunset, he was approached by a girl. She had a slender body with a large bust. Her attire was her school uniform, consisting of a dark red jacket with the letter P embroidered in gold, a white undershirt, a red bow, and a green skirt with a thin white stripe around the lower end. Ahem. The girl fake coughed to gain his attention. "Are you Hyodo Issei?" Issei said while he turned to look at the girl that spoke to him. Issei's not a pervert, but he can appreciate someone's beauty without sexualizing them. "Can I help you? I don't think we've ever met." "My name is Yuma Amano," Yuma said. She was fidgeting quite a bit with her hands. She then took a deep breath before continuing. "Hyodo Issei, are you seeing anyone right now?" And no, I'm not at the moment," Issei said. He thought that the girl was about to confess to him. But he also realized that she was a fallen angel. So, he decided to play along for now. "I never had time to date anyone before." Terrific. "I've been watching you for a while now, and I started to fall in love with you," Yuma said with glee. But looking at Issei, she became nervous again. Would you mind going out with me?" Issei was shocked. Sure. Issei was only planning to play along with Yuma. But his fiery eyes' golden pupils didn't detect any lies, except for her name. The eyes are capable of seeing through illusions and lies. Hence why he knew Yuma was a fallen angel. Just like how he knows that Kiba and Akeno were devils, not because of illusions, but because of their magical energy, which he can see. Staring at Yuma, Issei had no words to say except to accept her confession. Wonderful. Yuma said. How about we go on a date this Sunday? Sure, Issei said. Knowing that Yuma wasn't up to something, he decided why not go on a date with the beautiful girl. He took a deep breath and calmed himself. Can I have your number? That way, I can contact you and give you details for our date on Sunday. Yuma took a piece of paper and pen from inside her jacket. and she proceeded to write down her number before handing it over to Issei. "Here you go," Yuma said. She then bowed her head. "I have to go now. Please contact me anytime you need to." Issei waved his hand goodbye at her, and he walked home. While heading home, he was still confused about the real reason why Yuma approached. But nothing Yuma said indicated any lies. Not even his fiery eyes' golden pupil were able to discern any lies. Issei shook his head and stopped thinking about it for now. It's not like he isn't capable of protecting himself. Previous ch2 of 74. Next, Chapter 2. Issei woke up and decided to do his usual morning routine the following morning, which was to roll the gacha, shower, get changed for school, and then have breakfast downstairs. Oh, and he can't forget to bring Diedrich food inside his dimensional farm. Then again, the dragon can go and hunt whatever animal he wants to eat. Issei then activated the ultimate gacha in his mind, and a screen appeared in front of him. No one except for Issei was capable of seeing the interface of the ultimate gacha. He looked through all the rewards for today, and he saw a few things he liked to have. So, he clicked spin for the day. Gacha is now rolling. Congratulations! Issei received wedding rings x11 God. The user may access the reward within the inventory. Ha! What the hell? Issei said. He was baffled at the item he got. Wedding rings with a rarity of God? What the hell kind of rings could they be? Issei took out the card for the wedding ring x11 God. He read the description on it, and he was surprised. He was not expecting such an item. Wedding ring. God, a wedding ring forged by a god of immense power. The god never wanted to be separated from the people he fell in love with. Hence, he created this wedding ring to tie their life with his. This would allow them to come back to him no matter how many times the people he loves die. As long as the god lived, his spouses would live as well. Unfortunately, God wasn't able to complete the rings before the demise of his spouses. Nevertheless, the god completed the ring and kept it in a temple. It was kept there until the person destined for them arrived. Gold ring for the male and 10 blank rings. Abilities. Life force intertwine. The moment the blank ring is worn by a person with mutual love as the wearer of the gold ring, their life force will be intertwined. The wearer of the gold ring will be able to feel the presence and feelings of the gold ring wearer. And the gold ring wearer would be able to feel the emotions and presence of the blank ring wearers. Mutual summoning. The wearer of the rings can summon anyone wearing the other rings. However, this would only be possible if the summoned person agreed to the summoning. Magic sharing. The magical energy of the people wearing the blank ring could access the magical reserve of the wearer of the gold ring. However, since the user has no magical energy due to having true magic, all blank ring wearers will have their magic turned to true magic. Adaptation. The blank rings will change form depending on the wearer's taste. Whether it be bedazzled by diamonds or a simple-looking ring. There is nothing the blank rings can't transform into within reason. Immortality. As long as the wearer of the gold ring is alive, the others would be alive no matter what happens to them. No reality warping power will be able to overcome the power of the ring's immortality. However, the gold ring wearer is not given any form of immortality by the wedding ring. Holy shit. No wonder the rings are considered a god rarity, Issei said. His eyes and jaws were wide open when he finished reading the description of the wedding rings. But why does it have 10? Damn. I guess the god was popular with the ladies. Issei shook his head and closed the interface of the ultimate gacha system. He then headed to the bathroom to have a shower. 10 minutes later, while Issei was enjoying his shower, he heard his mother shouting that breakfast was ready and hurry up. Hearing his mother's voice, Issei hurriedly finished his shower and got ready for school. As soon as he was done, he headed downstairs to eat breakfast. When Issei arrived at the dining table, he saw the other 3 house residents. There was his mother, Hyodo Miki, a full-time housewife. She has the appearance of a middle-aged woman with dark brown hair tied into a ponytail and hazel eyes. Beside Miki was Hyodo Goru, an ordinary office worker. Goru has the appearance of a middle-aged man with brown hair and brown eyes and wears glasses. The last of the resident of the Hyodo household was Office. Her appearance is a cute young girl with long black hair down to her hips and black eyes. Her ears differ from an average human's as they have pointed tips, although her long black hair makes this feature difficult to notice. Her dark gray eyes have reptilian slitted pupils. Her attire consists of Gothic Lolita fashion. There wasn't a single person in the Hyodo household that didn't know what Issei was capable of. He believed that them being aware of the supernatural is far safer than being ignorant and dying without knowing why. Issei's parents have a protection spell on them. It is called Guardian Vishanti, a heavy-duty protection spell capable of blocking powerful magic. However, the more it's attacked, the more energy it would lose. Fortunately, weaker attacks do not deplete the protection of Guardian Vishanti. Looking away from the newspaper, Goru saw that his son was done getting ready for school. "Oh, Issei," Goru greeted. He then put down his newspaper and continued speaking. "Hurry and eat your breakfast before they get cold. Look, Office is nearly done with hers and is now eyeing yours." Issei looked in Office's direction, and his father was right. But the second it took him to look in Office's direction, she was already done with her food and her hands were making their way towards his plate. Issei immediately disappeared from his position and reappeared with a plate of food in hand. What Issei used was bobup. "Come on, Office," Issei said. He looked at the dragon, and she was pouting at him. "You know this is mine. If you wanted more, you could have asked for seconds instead of grabbing someone's food. That's just bad manners." "Sorry," Office said. Her face then went back to its usual emotionless look. Her stomach then gurgled, and she held it. "I was still hungry, and there was no more left." Issei sighed at this, and he decided to conjure Office some more food. There were rice, egg, chicken, and some steak. He even conjured some cookies for Office to eat. Seeing the food in front of her, Office's eyes sparkled with excitement. "So? Eyes," Mickey called. "Do you have any plans for this coming weekend?" "I do," Issei said. He was eating his breakfast. "So," he replied, a bit slow to his mother as he would swallow his food before speaking. "I have a date with Yuma on Sunday. She's a fallen angel." "Are you going to be okay?" Mickey said. She was worried about something happening to Issei as she remembered Issei talking about a bunch of fallen angels attacking a mother and daughter a few years ago. She also remembered Issei coming home disappointed that day as he wasn't strong enough to help the duo. "I still remember what those fallen angels did to those poor people." "I don't think anything would go wrong," Issei said. He then took a drink of his water before continuing. "My fiery eyes and golden pupils also didn't detect any lies from her. But I'll keep things in mind and be cautious." "That's good," Mickey said. She has nothing against fallen angels as she knew they were similar to humans and not all of them are evil. "I do hope nothing bad happens." "Honey. Why would you say that?" Goru said. He fixed his glasses and continued speaking. "You know that you just raised a flag." "Come on, Dad," Issei said. He sighed at his father's antics. "You know, you're the only one that believes in that superstition." "Oh, really?" Goru said. "I still remember the day a friend of mine from work raised a few flags, and what happened to him? Dead, hit by a car." "That's a horrible example," Issei said. "You know that he was driving recklessly in a busy street?" "I know, but it's because of such an attitude of denying something bad could happen that something bad happens," Goru said. "Besides, if magic can exist, why can't superstition be real?" "I guess you have a point," Issei said. His ultimate gacha was something that was nothing more than stories in his world before he got one. What's to say that superstitions aren't real? Anyway, I need to get going. I don't want to be late for class. "Don't you have that portal thingy?" Goru said. He was then making a circular motion with his hand, indicating the usage of Eldritch Portal. "That should be a useful tool. You can arrive at school within seconds." "I don't want to use a portal," Issei said. He loves going to school on his bike. The wind in his hair in the morning felt great. "You know that I like to take the VMAX for a ride in the morning." Issei finished his breakfast and headed out of the house. Once he was out, he took his VMAX out of his inventory and rode it to school. Issei really did love feeling the wind in his face. It was a shame that Issei couldn't just take out his wings and fly in the sky. First, previous ch3 of 74. Next, chapter 3. Once Issei arrived at Kuo Academy, people looked at him as they usually do when he arrives, as he is the only student to own a vehicle. Why is that? That's because you have to pay Kuo Academy for parking. Hence students don't usually learn to drive at a later age. At least that's the case for Kuo Academy. Once Issei parked his VMAX, Issei headed to his classroom. When he entered, he saw a scene that he was all too familiar with as it happens every day. Matsuda and Motohama were scolded by the female body as they were once again caught peeping on the girls' toilet. Issei sighed. He wasn't sure why he was even friends with the perverted duo, but then again, they were both people that helped him get through the sadness he felt when Irina left. The ultimate gacha helped, but not as much as Matsuda and Motohama. So, he approached them. "Come on, guys," Issei said. He looked at the duo that was on the ground groveling. Issei sighed at the sight in front of him. "I told you two to cut it out. How will you both get girlfriends if all you do is chase them away?" "We can't help it, okay," Motohama said. He was on the ground, groveling and crying as he spoke. "It was just there. The toilet was tempting me to enter." "I agree with Motohama," Matsuda said. He was the same as Motohama. He was on the floor groveling while crying. "Besides, we didn't even get to enter before we were caught and beaten up. They could have at least given us a little peek before assaulting us." "You know what?" Issei said. He only got to school, and he was already done with the perverted duo. "I'm not even going to bother with you two today. I'm going to my seat and pretend that I saw nothing." As Issei said, he went to his seat and ignored the things happening with Matsuda and Motohama. Instead of worrying about them, he decided to read a book he had purchased the other day. It was about AI creation. Issei was, after all, well versed in computer science thanks to the Master Hacker, Master Roboticist, and Master Engineer. While Issei was reading, Kiryu Aika approached him. "Yo, Issei," Aika said. She was in a teasing mode, but when she saw that Issei was not, she dropped her smirk. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," Issei said as he sighed. "I've tried to help those two, but they don't listen. I'm so tired of helping them. So, today, I won't even bother." "Sheesh. You, of all people, are getting annoyed. That's never happened before," Aika said. She then remembered why she came over to Issei in the first place. "By the way, I meant to ask, why didn't you bring your VMAX yesterday?" "Oh, that's simple," Issei said. He then came up with a reason on the spot. "I had to carry a bunch of kendo gears yesterday for the match with the kendo club. I couldn't properly balance it on the bike if I used it." The truth is, Issei woke up late and was running out of time. So, he decided to do what his father suggested today. Issei opened a portal to Kuo Academy. Thankfully, there was an alley nearby that he could use to hide his portal. "That's true," Aika said. "At least the kendo club gave you your own storage now. You won't have to keep bringing it to school and back home unless you have to clean it." A few minutes later, the class started. Issei was paying attention, somewhat. He wasn't arrogant, but the lesson's topic was too easy for him. If the class was about Japanese or any language, mathematics, physics, or information technology, Issei already knew it. For the most part, the only lesson that Issei listens to intently is human biology and chemistry. After all the classes were over, Issei didn't have to attend the kendo club since they didn't have any tournaments soon. The only reason there was a match between him and Murayama was to entice others to join the club. In an abandoned church, Yuma Amano, or her real name Rainier, was sending a text to Issei about how excited she was. Receiving a reply from Issei made Rainier smile. Not far from Rainier are the other residents of the abandoned church. One of the residents was a male, and the other two were female. The male was known as Donasik, a middle-aged looking man with short black hair and dark blue eyes. His attire consisted of a pale gray trench coat over a white dress shirt with a matching ascot, black pants and shoes, a pair of black gloves, and a black fedora. One of the females is known as Kalawarna, a tall and buxom woman with brown eyes and long, navy blue hair that obscured her right eye. Her attire consisted of a maroon, trench coat-like top with a wide collar, a matching miniskirt, and black-heeled shoes. The trench coat top was open at her chest, giving a view of her breasts and cleavage. She also wore a gold necklace around her neck. The second female resident was a middle girl with blonde hair styled into twin tails and blue eyes. She wears a gothic Lolita attire, consisting of a black Lolita dress with white frills, a large black bow on the front, a green jewel embedded on the collar, white thigh-high socks, and black shoes. She also wore a large black bow on top of her hair. "What got you so giggly?" Middle asked. She was very curious as to why the typically moody Rainier was smiling like a schoolgirl. Usually, you only have this kind of smile when you're praised by Azazel or Shemazai. Nothing, Rainier said. She still had her attention on her phone. She was still chatting with Issei about where they could meet on Sunday for their date. I'm just making a few plans for Sunday. Whatever, Middle said with a roll of her eye. She then took out a photo in her pocket and handed it over to Rainier, who proceeded to be shocked as to why she had a picture of Issei. We have a mission from Kokebil. According to him, the person in the picture is a holder of a sacred gear. What does that have to do with him? Rainier asked. She knew that Kokebil hated anyone that wasn't a fallen angel. To him, every other race is inferior to the fallen angel. Kokebil recruiting someone is out of the question. I know that Kokebil hates anyone that isn't fallen angel. Even then, a fallen angel that is not up to his standard is still trash in his eyes. What does a human have to do with him? If you think that Kokebil wants to recruit the human because he has a sacred gear, you're wrong, Kalawarna said. She sighed as she didn't want anything to do with this mission. She has tried to contact Azazel regarding the task given by Kokebil, but he isn't reachable. Kokebil wants him dead. According to him, that human is a threat to our people. What? Is he crazy? Rainier said. She still remembers Azazel's mission for them. And that's to observe the wielders of a sacred gear. Nothing more, nothing less. I don't trust Kokebil, and I've never trusted him. Azazel gave his orders, and that's to observe, not kill. We have no choice, Middle said. Her face distorted in fear. If we disobey his order, then he'll kill us. Middle is right, Kalawarna said. She sighed once more since she didn't agree to this task. But, it's her life over another. She chooses her life. You have to complete the task as it was ordered by Kokebil himself, and he specified you to complete the task. Tisk. What does it matter if you take a life of a single useless human? Donasik said. He didn't care for other people. Whether that was human or a fallen angel. He has always just cared for himself. Just kill the damn human and move on. All this hesitation is useless. Rainier was shaking. She had a choice to make. Either she thinks about herself and kill Issei or protect him and get herself killed. However, a few moments later, Rainier has made her choice. There was only one choice, which would be her choice 100% of the time. Donasik was right. There was no point in hesitating with her decision. First, previous ch4 of 74 next, chapter 4 Sunday afternoon. Issei was waiting for Yuma in the park. He was sitting on the fountain, looking at his phone for the time. Issei arrived 30 minutes earlier than the scheduled meeting. When Yuma arrived, Issei told her that he had just got to their rendezvous a few minutes ago. But she wasn't stupid. Yuma knew that Issei had arrived a bit before her. As an apology for making Issei wait, Yuma grabbed hold of his hand. Issei felt how soft her hand was. I can keep holding it forever. It's so smooth, warm, and comforting. Issei thought. But looking at Yuma, Issei saw that she was saddened even when she was smiling. Is something going on? Her smile wasn't the same as when we first met. Issei had no idea what was going on with Yuma, but he didn't want to pry because they'd only met a few days ago. If her mood continues, Issei intends to inquire about what's wrong. For the time being, he just wanted to enjoy his time with Yuma, and who knows, maybe that would help her forget about whatever was bothering her. Issei's dream of going on a date while holding hands with a gorgeous girl came true. He was so touched that he was on the verge of tears, and he wanted to kiss Yuma as a thank you. But Issei was well aware that he should not rush things. He didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable with him when he was trying to cheer her up. Issei and Rainier had a good time on their date by traveling to several clothing stores and trying different outfits. Yuma looked stunning in whichever sort of clothes she wore. From the innocent-looking dresses to the dominatrix-like garment. She was very stunning. While they were going around, Issei saw that Yuma's genuine smile had returned, and she was having fun. But there are times that Issei would see her other smile return. He was worried that something was wrong, but he had no choice but to let it go for now. After a few hours of going from store to store, Issei and Yuma were famished. So, they ate at a family restaurant. The store wasn't all that big, and there was only one table left that was meant for a party of 6, but since there were no other seats, they sat on it. Issei told Yuma that she could pick a fancier restaurant if she liked, but Yuma told Issei that she didn't need anything fancy. Hence, they ate at the family restaurant. Yuma and Issei ordered a burger that they asked to be customized. While they were eating, they talked about themselves a bit. Now, Issei knew that not everything Yuma said was true. His fiery eyes and golden pupils told him that Yuma was saying half-truths. Things such as schools, her friends, etc. They were half-truths because she didn't go to school and whatnot. But everything else she said about herself, they were all real. As Yuma talked about herself, Issei just stared at her the entire time. Even when she would pause to take a bite out of her burger, Issei would look her in the eye and smile. He found her adorable. He couldn't take my eyes off her, and she, too, noticed since she blushed and looked away. While they were eating and staring at each other, Issei felt as if he understood how other teenagers felt when they were on a date. Issei felt as if he was alive for the first time, and it had nothing to do with fighting. After having their meal, it was finally getting dark. Issei and Yuma didn't want the date to end just yet. So, they took a stroll in the park, where they had their rendezvous. Eventually, it got very dark that their date had to end. "Listen, Issei," Yuma said. She was looking down at the ground. She held her chest, and she took a deep breath. "To commemorate our first date, would you mind doing something for me?" Issei said. Looking at Yuma, he saw it once more. She had her fake smile. "Sure, I don't mind. What do you want me to do?" "Can you close your eyes?" Yuma said. Her eyes were on the verge of tears. "And whatever happens, don't open it." Issei did as Yuma said. He closed his eyes, and he felt her get closer and closer to him. A moment later, he felt something. Issei felt Yuma kiss him on the lips. He then heard her whisper. "I'm so sorry, Issei," Yuma said. Her voice sounds so remorseful. "Goodbye." Issei felt a gust of wind a second later, and Yuma was gone. Looking around, Issei only found a piece of her feather in the pocket of his shirt. It was black and reminiscent of the night sky. Holding onto the feather, Issei wondered why Yuma apologized and said goodbye. Not able to think of an answer, Issei sighed and headed back home. As Issei walked away, Rainier watched him on top of a tree with tears in her eyes. This was her choice, and no matter how many times she was given to choose a path, she would always 100% decide to sacrifice her life rather than an innocent person. With Issei now gone, she flew back to the abandoned church, knowing what was to come. But if one was to look into Rainier's eyes, it wasn't fear that one would find but determination. Determination to accept the consequences of her choice. Once Rainier arrived in the abandoned church, Middlet, Kalawarna and Donasek waited for her. By this time, Rainier's tears were already dried, and she washed her face along the way. "So?" Middlet asked. She looked at Rainier, expecting good news. "Did you kill him?" "I didn't," Rainier said. Middlet looked at her in shock, and so did the Kalawarna. However, Donasek only had contempt. "I wasn't able to do. HMPH. You know what he will do to you since you failed," Donasek said. He had no issue showing his contempt towards Rainier, who failed the task given to her. "I hope you're ready for what's to come when you enter the church." Rainier already knew what was coming, and she accepted that she would die. But nonetheless, she wasn't going down without a fight. After all, who's to say that Kokebiel wouldn't send someone else like Donasek to come after her Issei? So, she decided to fight him to the death since she would die anyway. The least she could do was try and take down the person gunning for Issei. Back in Issei's family house, he arrived and entered his home. Issei's parents were waiting for him to ask how his date went. Being the good son he was, Issei answered all their questions as best as possible. "The date went great," Issei said. However, his parents could see that he was contemplating something. And without them asking, Issei answered. "When the date started, I realized something was wrong, but I didn't want to pry. So, I thought maybe showing her a good time would make her forget what was bothering her." Throughout the date, her mood did improve, and her smile was no longer the fake one that she had when we met up for the afternoon. However, I can see from time to time that she would give me one of her fake smiles as if she was worried about something. After eating some food, it was getting dark, but we didn't want the date to end yet. I had fun. Yuma had fun. So, we decided to stroll in the park where we met up in the afternoon. I thought all was going well, but I was wrong. Yuma asked me if I could do something for her to commemorate our date. I agreed, and she asked me to close my eyes and not to open them no matter what. So, I didn't open my eyes. Yuma kissed me. It felt electrifying when I felt her lips on mine. But at the same time, she whispered an apology to my ear, and she said goodbye. I pondered why she said those words all the way home, but I couldn't think of anything. From what you described, Yuma seemed to have fun if she was willing to kiss you, Mickey said. Mickey had this thinking face before she continued speaking. I know I wouldn't kiss my date at the end of the date if I didn't have a good time. And that's considering he's a hunk. Goru sighed as it was what happened on his first date with Mickey. Though, in the end, he was able to capture her heart. All this time, Ophis was just staring at the family, conversing about the date. She knew nothing of what was going on, and her best course of action was to keep quiet. However, she had a pout on her face, which Issei saw. So, he picked her up and sat her on his lap. Ophis liked this, and she could never have enough of sitting on Issei's lap. While the family talked, Issei and the others heard a crash on the front door. Issei told his person to head upstairs as he checked to ensure that everything was safe. Mickey and Goru nodded their heads. They took Ophis from Issei, and they headed upstairs. As soon as Issei opened the door, he saw 3 bloodied people. One of them had a missing arm, and the other had her wings ripped off. As for the last one, Issei saw that she had a massive hole in her stomach and was on the verge of dying. Issei recognized the energy signature as Yuma. He immediately picked her up in her arms and used his telekinesis to levitate the other 2 inside the house. First, previous ch 5 of 74. Next, chapter 6. The following morning, Rainier and the others woke up. They checked their bodies, and they had no injuries. No pain either. Kalawarna looked at her arm, and it was regenerated. Middle looked at her wings, and it was healed. Rainier looked at her stomach, and it was healed. Where are we? Middle asked. She was just as confused as the others. I remember Kokebeel ripping my wings off, but now, it's healed. My arm as well, Kalawarna said. She's never heard of a sacred gear capable of healing a severed arm. This can't be possible. Only a powerful person with healing magic can regenerate an entire arm. But that would mean. Kalawarna and Middle had a look of horror at what was being implied. They were hoping that the person that saved them was a sacred gear wielder. Otherwise, the person that saved them is an immensely powerful being. No, it can't be, Rainier said. She knew for a fact where she was now. The other night, at her most desperate moment, she wanted to see Issei one more time before her death. So, she brought her friends to Issei's house. No, it's not possible. According to Kokebeel's details, he was supposed to have a dragon-type sacred gear. He? Who's he? Kalawarna said. But then she remembered that Rainier was meant to eliminate a person that was a sacred gear wielder. No, that can't be. If that's true, he wasn't a simple person. Hold on, you two, Middle said. She was not following what was going on. What are you two talking about? The person that Rainier was meant to kill, Kalawarna said. Middle then had a look of understanding that turned into horror. Yeah, he wasn't some simple person after all. It was at this point that Issei entered the room. Kalawarna and Middle saw Issei and screamed. Geez. What's with the screaming? Issei said. He was covering his ears. I'm just here to make sure you're all okay. Issei, you, but how? Rainier asked. She was sure that he was meant to be a normal person. Then she realized that if Issei was a part of the supernatural world, then there was a chance he must have known that she was a fallen angel. Did you know that I was a fallen angel? I did, from the moment we met, Issei said. He then sighed. I didn't want to just tell you that I knew since I'm not sure if you wanted me to know. Issei was right. Rainier didn't know if she would ever tell Issei that she was a fallen angel. Maybe if they got serious, but that was in the future. If you knew I was a fallen angel, why did you agree to go on a date with me? Rainier asked. She was shaking, afraid of what Issei was going to say. Weren't you afraid that I would hurt you? I had nothing to worry about, Issei said. He smiled at Rainier because he remembered the day she confessed. When she told Issei of her feelings, Rainier wasn't lying. Because I knew that you weren't lying when you said you started to fall in love with me. Issei then activated his fiery eyes golden pupil, a version that allows others to see it. Rainier looked into Issei's eyes, and she felt that there was nothing she could hide from it. This is known as the fiery eyes golden pupil, Issei said. He then deactivated his eyes. There are no lies or illusions that my eyes can't see through. That means why you know all the half-truths I told you the other day, Rainier said. She felt embarrassed that Issei knew she was lying about being a schoolgirl. She was thousands of years old, and she was interested in 17 years old. I think I'm going to die of embarrassment. You're fine, Issei said. He then laughed out loud. I don't mind dating someone a few years older than me. A few years, Rainier said. She knew that Issei was joking when he said a few years. But she still wanted to say her piece. You do now that I'm a few thousands of years older than you. Meh. I don't mind, Issei said. He then got close to Rainier and put his fingers on her chin. Besides, I've taken a liking to you. The fact that you were willing to sacrifice yourself to protect someone you care about makes you an amazing woman in my eyes. So, if you like, we can continue our relationship. I would like that. Rainier was blushing. She was a few thousands of years older, but she's never been in a relationship. Are you okay with this? Why wouldn't I be? Issei asked. He then gestured to all of him. I'm not exactly a normal person either. I might have been born human, but that's not what I am anymore. Well, at least half of me is no longer human. While Issei was speaking to Rainier, a certain infinite dragon entered the room since she was getting hungry, and she wanted Issei to conjure food for her. And Issei subsequently picked up the dragon as if she was just a little girl. Now, Rainier, Middelt and Kalawarna are part of the Grigori. This means that they are up to date on the list of the most powerful beings in the world. And they also happen to know what all those powerful beings look like so that they don't accidentally piss them off. Seeing Ophis, the fallen angel trio passed out as Issei was treating her as if it was just an ordinary person. Oof. I think your appearance might have been too much for them, Issei said. He then looked at Ophis, who had no care in the world. At least someone who isn't close to Ophis would think so. Anyway, we need to let them rest. Passing out might not be bad for them. Issei then left the room and shut the door. He needed to get ready for school anyways. So, he went to shower, but not before he conjured food for Ophis, who is a bottomless pit. Once Issei was at school, he went through his classes as he does every weekday. But this time, Issei was surprised. Kiba Yudo came to his class and told him that Rias Gremory, one of Kuo's two great ladies and Kuo's #1 beauty, wanted to speak to him. And what exactly does she want from me? Issei asked. He was curious. Rias and Sona, the two most powerful devils in Kuo, have left him alone for a long time. What could they possibly want with him? I don't think I've done anything to catch the eye of the OCR president. What Bucko wants is up to her to explain, Kiba said. It wasn't his place to explain as he was only ordered to invite Issei to the OCR room. Once you meet up with Bucko, she will explain everything. Issei then followed Kiba to the orc room. Once he was there, Rias seemed to be going for a spooky vibe as the lights in the room were off and candles lit. Issei saw the school mascot Kaneko on the couch, another one of the two great ladies of Kuo, Akeno making tea, and lastly, Rias herself sitting on a chair behind her Brobdingnagian table. Welcome, Hyodo Issei, Rias said. She's acting quite dramatically. Please, take a seat. I such explain the purpose of my invitation. Issei looked around and found an open seat. He sat down and looked at Rias and waited for her explanation. Tell me, do you believe in the occult? In the supernatural? Rias said. She had her left-hand finger intertwined with her right-hand finger while having her elbow on the table. Would you believe me if I told you they are all true? I know. It sounds unbelievable, but it's the truth. Rias and the rest of the OCR members took out their devil wings. Issei wasn't surprised since he already knew about them. As you can see, everyone in the OCR are devils, Rias said. She looked at Issei, but she could see that he wasn't interested. If you join us, I can give benefits you could only dream of. If you accept to be part of my devil peerage, you can gain longevity that no humans have. Speak all languages as if you've studied them all your life. Strength beyond that of a human. Now, I offer you devilhood. Will you accept? No, thank you, Issei said. He scoffed at the benefits. I don't need to be a devil to gain all that. Issei wasn't impressed with the so-called benefits. It was laughable even. Longevity. He has Avalon. It essentially makes him immortal. Speak all languages. He has fiery eyes, golden pupils. It allows him to learn a language that he's never studied before instantly. Strength. He was far more powerful than a heavenly dragon. Diedrich barely made him sweat. Rias was shocked. The words Issei used suggest that he was in the know of what was going on. What do you mean? Are you aware of the supernatural world? Issei didn't answer Rias. Instead, he created a Dao mandalas to conjure the flames of Faltine. Everyone in the room felt the power of the flames conjured by Issei. Even as devils, they felt the need to leave the room. But thankfully, Issei cancelled his spell. Rias and the others had their eyes wide, and their jaws dropped. Even the emotionless Kaneko was shocked. First, previous ch 7 of 74. Next, chapter 7. Within the orc, Issei has already left. Yet, all the members were still shocked by what they had witnessed. Issei, the person they thought was a regular person, created a fire with his magic that was powerful enough to make everyone in its vicinity back away due to the heat it was producing. What just happened? Rias asked. She was still not of sound mind. Did that just really happen? How is it possible? I felt no form of magical energy from him, yet, he was able to produce such a powerful fire with magic. Bucko, did you not realize? Kiba said. He was trying to figure out what had happened. But he was able to notice something unusual. The magic of Issei did not produce any form of magical signature. It's as if there was no energy forming the fire, but instead, it just existed out of nothingness. I noticed that too, Akeno said. Usually, she would have some remark and a perverted thought, but it wasn't time for it. Such power, but no energy usage, is that possible? It's almost like magic, Rias said. But the type of magic she was thinking of was something else. Most beings that use magic do conversion. Magical energy to magical effect. But Issei did none of that. The magic just appeared without conversion. I've never heard of something like this before. Not even from the God of Bible or the four original Satan. What Issei did look almost as if he didn't need a form of magical energy to make magic. While everyone was still silent and contemplating what they experienced, Sona Citri, student council of Kuo Academy, arrived and is now staring at the orc members. What's going on with you? Sona asked Rias. She was curious as to why Rias was in a catatonic-like state. I've never seen you like this before. Sona, sorry, Rias said. She was finally out of her daze. I just witnessed something insane. Sona was interested in what it was that shocked Rias. So, Sona asked for a story. Rias sighed and explained how she spoke to Issei a few moments ago, and she found out that he wasn't as normal of a person as they thought. Rias also explained the abnormality that she experienced with Issei's magic. So, let me get this straight, Sona said. She sighed and pushed up her glasses that slid down her nose. You figured out the Issei wasn't a normal person and is actually powerful. Whatever he is, and you just let him leave. I wasn't in my right mind, okay. Rias said. She was frustrated that what Sona said was true. How would you react when a person you thought wasn't aware of the supernatural world, then suddenly, boom. The person uses a powerful spell that made you want to run away? Ahem. Sona faked coughed. She knew that she would probably react the same way as Rias. Well, at least I wouldn't let him just leave. I would have made a deal with him. According to you, he surpasses Kiba in his swordsmanship. You also told me he can do magic which sounds more powerful than Akeno's. I would have made a deal with him to train Akeno and Kiba. Yeah, I have nothing to say to that, Rias said. She couldn't even look Sona in the eye because she would never have thought of that. I might have to ask for him tomorrow. Ow. I still can't believe it would be a lot harder to ask him to join my peerage. Yeah, about that, Sona said. She had a feeling that Rias wouldn't be able to ensnare Issei to her peerage. I doubt he would be willing to join your peerage, or if you could even turn him into a devil. From what you told me, the magic he used casually was strong enough for you to want to leave his vicinity. I don't think you would be strong enough to turn him into a devil. Rias let out a groan due to frustration. What Sona said was right. As of right now, turning Issei into a devil might be impossible. The best she could do right is to enact Sona's suggestion of making a deal with Issei to train Akeno and Kiba. Back with Issei, he is currently on his VMAX in an open area. He was watching the sunset. But, after a while, he decided to head home. He still had to check on Rainier and her friends. Once he was home, he saw his parents at the dining table speaking to Rainier, but the other two were nowhere to be seen. Hey, you three seem to be having fun, Issei said in a teasing voice towards Rainier. Said girl just blushed and looked away. By the way, where are your two friends? They went back to Grigori, Rainier said. She then sighed. Since we couldn't contact Azazel, We need to contact the next best person. And that would be Shemazai. As for me, I don't plan to stay in the Grigori. I asked Middlet and Kalawarna to tell Shemazai that I'm leaving the Grigori. Well, if you're leaving the Grigori, what will you do now? Issei asked. You're welcome to stay here if you don't have a place to stay. I was speaking to your parents about that, Rainier said. She then smiled. They told me the same thing as you did. They said I can stay here since I was dating you, but I didn't want to freeload. So, they said I can help out in the store. I was surprised when the store they talked about is the most popular even amongst the supernatural. Yeah, our fresh fruit, vegetable, and meat products are the best in the world, Issei said. He smirked because the products came from the dimensional farm. I doubt you would find anything that could surpass our store's products. Issei can say that with certainty because the product of his family's store comes from the dimensional farm. Dimensional farm. God, a personal space where the user can plant anything he wants, even divine trees. The speed of plant growth is 1 to 100,000. A minute is equivalent to 100,000 minutes of growth. However, the moment the plant has reached full maturity, it would stop growing and instead be kept nourished to be at its best state. Animals would be treated similarly to plants. They would be nurtured to the best they can be. The user can even raise lions, tigers, giraffes, etc., but animals must be specified whether they are livestock or not. Animals not part of the livestock would gain some intelligence, be very loyal to the user, and listen to everything the user says. Even when taken out into the real world, the animals would remain loyal. However, livestock would do no such thing as they are nothing more than ordinary animals for harvest. That's for sure, Rainier said. She knows it to be true as devils, yokai, fallen angels, and even some from the other pantheon would send people to purchase goods from the store. I still remember when I first took a bite of my first apple from your family's store. I tasted heavenly. I've eaten nothing like it before, not even in heaven, but it's so expensive. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, it is, Issei said. He was still laughing. A long time ago, he realized that most of the rich people in the world are from the supernatural world. Those are the targets of his products. If you want to have some, you can just grab as many as you want. It's not like we'll run out of it anyway. Hey, are you serious? Rainier said. She knew how expensive the products were. She thought it would be due to not having a lot of products, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you. I've had to work hard in the Grigori to get enough money to buy a few fruits and meat from your store. No problem. Just don't overdo it, Issei said. Though, he wouldn't mind making Diedrich work overtime to harvest more. Anyway, I have homework to do. I'll go and finish it, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Huh. Is all Rainier could think. She might not be a real schoolgirl, but she knew schools give so much homework. There was no way Issei could complete it in a few minutes. But the thing is, Issei is capable of using images of icon. A duplication spell. He would duplicate himself and give homework to each of the duplicates. Rainier then shrugged her shoulders and called for Issei. Wait. Before you head upstairs, I need to ask you something, Rainier said. She wanted Issei's help with training. I wanted to ask you if you can help me train. When I went against Kokebiel, I felt hopeless. I couldn't even scratch him. I felt weak and pathetic, and because of me, Middlet and Kalawarna were hurt. I don't want to ever feel that way again, and you are the only person I can ask for help. Issei was not sure if he should. Not because he doesn't trust Rainier, he actually knows that she wasn't lying. Issei's way of training is far more intense than anyone would want to experience. This is a tough question to answer. My training is brutal. It's not something any normal or sane person would go through, but the result speaks for itself. I'll train you, but it'll be up to you to withstand my training's brutality. If it means I'll be stronger, I don't care how tortuous the training would be, Rainier said. She was on the verge of tears. Remembering her uselessness against Kokebiel hurts. I'll endure whatever I have to no longer feel that way again. Believe it or not, I know what it feels to be weak and pathetic, Issei said. Remembering the time he couldn't save the mother and daughter against the group of fallen angels. It hurts to think about. But rather than pitying himself, he decided to use those feelings to fuel his determination to get stronger and never feel useless again. That's why I'll train you to the best of my ability. Rainier smiled at Issei and was thankful to him for agreeing to help her. She was already falling in love with him a while back, but now, there was no doubt that she was in love with Hyodo Issei. and she was glad that she was dating him. First, previous ch8 of 74. Next, chapter 8. Back again in the Orc. Issei didn't know why he was back here again or why he even agreed to follow Akeno to the Orc, but he's here now. Issei looked at Rias, and she did not know how to speak with him. Seriously, you call me here, and all you do is stare at me, Issei said. He was going to start Reinare's training today. Yet, he was being held up due to Rias calling him. Can we please get this over with? I have things to do. Right, sorry about that, Rias said. She didn't know how to make a deal with someone who seemingly had nothing in need. I wanted to make a deal with you. As much as I wanted you to be part of my peerage, I realized that isn't possible. So, all I can do is go for the next best thing, which would be making a deal. I want you to train Kiba with the sword and Akeno in magic. You can ask me whatever you need in exchange, as long as it's reasonable. Issei was thinking. For a long time, he has been looking for the daughter of the woman that he tried to save from the group of fallen angels, but he was never able to do so. Issei has been curious if he was ever able to save the little girl or if she died like her mom since she suddenly disappeared. Okay, I'll train them, but in exchange, I want you to look for someone I've been searching for a long time here in Kuo. Is that all? Rias said. She was confused as to why that's all Issei was asking for. But what she doesn't know is how much the little girl's information has been eating away at Issei's mind. Knowing what happened is more valuable than any item or money anyone can give to Issei. Can I ask for the details of the little girl? The last time I saw the little girl was 7 years ago, Issei said. Looking through his memories, Issei described what he could to Rias. Back then, she seemed to be about my age. She had black hair and purple eyes. That wouldn't be enough to find the person you're looking for. Or at least it would be very difficult, Rias said. She could find the person with all the devil's connections, but it would be challenging due to lack of information. Do you have any more information about the person? Like the situation with the family, incidents you can remember, anything that could help? 7 years ago, the little girl and her mother were attacked by a group of fallen angels, Issei said. Rias was listening intently, but Akeno was shocked on the other hand. She and her mother were attacked by fallen angels 7 years ago. I tried to save them, but I was too weak to completely hold off the number of fallen angels. I was able to kill most, but when I was done, I saw that the little girl's mother had died, and the little girl was gone. I never knew what happened to the little girl, and it's been killing me to know what happened. Akeno was shaking in her seat. Sure enough, it was her and her mother that Issei was talking about. Akeno remembers it. A kid about her age took on a group of fallen angels and held them back. But unfortunately, the number of fallen angels was too much. Some slipped past his guard and were able to kill her mother. See, can I ask why you a question? Akeno, a person who is confident in herself, was stuttering. Like Issei, she has been looking for the person that tried to help her years ago. Was the mother-daughter pair attacked near S shrine? Yeah, Issei said. He was confused. How would Akeno know about it? Unless, he looked at Akeno and realized she looked like the little girl's mother. His eye twitched. How could he never have noticed? It's you. You were the little girl. You looked exactly like the mother. Akeno dashed towards him and gave him a hug. She's been wanting to do this for a long time. Thank the person that tried to help her. Going against a group of fallen angels at such a young age was not something anyone would just do. Yet, a kid her age was able to push them back. As it turns out, Issei was the reason she was still alive and striving to get stronger. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Akeno shouted. She finally found the person that she's been searching for. Thank you for saving me that day and trying to save my mom. Sorry I wasn't able to save her, Issei said. He was smiling since a part of him felt lighter after finding out the little girl from 7 years ago was okay. I tried to save you both, I really did, but I wasn't strong enough back then. It's not your fault, Akeno said. She then backed away from the hug. You did everything you could. It's those damn fallen angels that were at fault. Issei saw the eyes of Akeno and felt that something was wrong. She wasn't only blaming the group of fallen angels that attacked her and her mother, but the entire race. It was justifiable to blame the whole race in the eyes of a little girl, but she was a lot older now. Akeno should know it's not right to condemn the actions of the few on the entire race. That's just not right. Don't do that, Issei said. Akeno looked at him weirdly. Do not blame an entire race for the actions of the few. That's just not right, and you know it. Yes, some fallen angels are horrible people. But so are devils, yokai, dragons, and other races. There are good and bad people in every race. The fault of the horrible should never be projected to the good. Akeno understood what Issei was saying, but it's hard not to blame the entire race. Especially since she's never seen the good of the race. However, the person telling her this was the person that saved her years ago. The least she could do was to try. I don't know if I can do that, but I can try, Akeno said. She then smiled and then smirked. Now, how about I reward you for saving me all those years ago? I just know the thing. Akeno then licked her lips. Issei backed away from her as he saw her predatory smirk. Don't take her seriously. She's never been done it with anyone, Rias said. She sighed. Akeno is always like this. She loved to tease. One day, Rias hopes to see a guy tease back. She wondered how Akeno would act then. Just let her be, and she might get bored and leave you alone. Okay. Anyways, since you technically achieved your end of the bargain, Issei said. They did their part of the deal, so he would honor his. I'll train Akeno and Kiba. But not just them. I'll also be training Kaneko as well. Ha. Kaneko looked up from her pile of food when she heard what Issei said. How did she become part of the conversation? She didn't know, but she was curious now. Kaneko listened to the conversation more intently now, but she still wanted to eat her snack. When she looked down at her food, the quantity was more than before. She was confused but happy to see the addition. She's interesting, Issei said. He looked at her and he saw potential. Wasted potential. With the few times Issei has seen Kaneko move, he can tell she's strong physically, but her movement isn't refined, untrained. I can see potential in her. And she's compatible with one of my martial arts since she's quite flexible. Kaneko looked at Issei, and she saw no lies in his words, but she was having this weird feeling that she might be put in the ringer more than the other two. It was only for a moment, but she saw it. She saw Issei smirk. Oh? That's quite generous of you. But Kaneko is a hand-to-hand combatant, Rias said. She's been told Issei was great with a sword. So, when he said martial arts, she thought he meant sword martial arts. Which would be incompatible with Kaneko. I don't think she has the talent for it. I wasn't talking about sword training, Issei said. He should have elaborated on what he meant. I'm quite good with my hand-to-hand combat. I want to teach Taekwondo to Kaneko. I see, so, where and when would the training begin? Rias asked. She didn't know how Issei trained. So, information about where and when is a normal thing to ask. If it's all right with you, I'd like to make a training schedule to fit both of us. Issei had no problem with that. So, he worked with Rias for the next 30 minutes to schedule Akeno, Kiba and Kaneko's training. Every day, after school, Issei would train the trio for 3 hours and on the weekends, they would be trained for 7 hours. However, Issei told Rias that he could do something that would make everyday life as training. Rias was interested, and she asked him to show her. Issei smirked, and he applied the runes on her body that caused the gravity on her body to increase. Rias dropped to the ground. One thing to note about these runes is that the stronger you get, the stronger the gravity will be. Though, there is a limit. However, Rias and the others were not reaching that limit for a long time. Funny thing, when Issei was going to remove the runes from Rias, she asked him not to. Issei nodded, and he applied the runes to Kaneko, Akeno and Kiba. The worst of the three was Kiba, which came as a shock since he was supposed to be a swordsman. But then again, he does seem to be a speed-type fighter. First, previous ch9 of 74. Next, chapter 9. A week has passed since the Issei learned of Akeno's history and his deal to train the orc members. Akeno was quite disappointed when she was told she could not wield the mystic arts of Issei. Still, she didn't complain much as the spells he was teaching her were potent, such as the divine regeneration of the vermilion bird, descent of the lightning dragon, great barrier of the black turtle, and super strength of the white tiger. As for Kiba, his training was going well. He was able to master the Mother's Rosario. Quite ironic since he was a devil. However, he struggled to comprehend Issei's demon sealing strike. Kiba tried countless times, but the only times it worked was when he was being actively guided by Issei. Otherwise, he would always fail. Lastly, Kaneko was enjoying her training, albeit she was right. Kaneko was being pushed harder than the other two. But for some reason, Issei would treat her very well. Whenever she achieved the proper form in the technique she was learning, Issei would give her a tasty treat. And Issei would even pet her head. She would be lying if she said she hated it. Issei's warm hands on her head make her very calm and tingly all over. As for Issei, he was having fun watching Diedrich harvest the crops while singing. The dragon was unaware that Issei was there recording him. Issei then cleared his throat, and Diedrich yelped like a little girl. This made Issei laugh his ass off. Issei. How long have you been there? Diedrich asked. He was embarrassed at the way he yelped when he heard Issei. You didn't happen to see anything, did you? What are you talking about? Issei asked. He was acting ignorant of what Diedrich was talking about. Anyways, I'm here to tell you that you can leave the dimensional farm in a week. Ha ha ha. Finally, I would be able to see the outside world again, Diedrich said. He loved the dimensional farm, and he loved harvesting the crops, but he wanted to see the real world again and someday meet his rival. Then shove it in his face that he was free from the sacred gear. I can't wait to see the look on Albion's face when he realizes I'm no longer in the sacred gear. Issei shook his head towards Diedrich. Even now, he's still obsessed with his rivalry with the white dragon, Albion. Diedrich wasn't rampaging because Issei kicked his ass so bad that he started crying. Anyways, I'll see you later. I just came by to tell you the remaining amount of time you have to stay in the dimensional farm, Issei said. He then started walking away, but after walking a certain distance, he looked at Diedrich and spoke. By the way, I have a recording of you singing. After saying his piece, Issei disappeared from the dimensional farm. No! Diedrich shouted. He wanted to rage around the farm, but if Issei found out he damaged the crops or anything on the farm, he would be dead. Why, oh why, did you have to give me to someone like him, God? Why couldn't it be a different and more normal person? Diedrich was crying. Outside, Issei showed the video of the singing Heavenly Dragon to Rainier and Ophis. The former laughed out loud for seeing an absurd thing. Though, Rainier could admit, Diedrich's voice was quite pleasant to listen to. This is hilarious. And to top it off, he even had a farmer's hat on, Rainier said. She was wiping the tears of laughter from her eyes. Where did he get that thing? I actually made that for him, Issei said. He remembered how Diedrich used to hate the hat, but he grew to love it as he grew to love farming. You'd be surprised how much Diedrich loves that farmer's hat. How did you get him to wear that thing? Rainier asked. She was curious since she doubted the heavenly dragon would have liked having something that silly in his head. Did he lose to a bet or something? No, when he lost a bet, his punishment was to stay in the dimensional farm for a year, Issei said. Issei laughed. The reason he has a farmer's hat is that my mother said she wanted to see Diedrich with one. So, I made one and made him wear it. Huh? He allowed you to put a hat on his head? Rainier said. She was confused. One of the most powerful dragons just does what Issei says. But that would be ridiculous, unless. Why you're stronger than a heavenly dragon. That's the only explanation why he would do as you say. I may or may not have made Diedrich cry once or twice, Issei said. All the time Issei made Diedrich cry was justified. 1. Diedrich destroyed the farm. 2. He killed all the animals that Issei had collected. 3. Diedrich mocked him for being a weak human when he was raging. I don't make him cry because I like bullying him, but because he deserved it. Anyway, Issei, I'm ready to resume our training for today, Rainier said. But looking at her hand, it was shaking since she was under the pressure of the gravity rune. Her standing up is training enough, but she wants to push herself further. You still told me that you would be teaching me some of your elemental magic and the Taekwondo. But seriously, do I have to learn hand-to-hand combat? I mean, I'm a magic user. It would be best to know how to fight hand-to-hand in case your enemy comes up close and personal, Issei said. He knows how important it is to know how to physically protect oneself. Besides, it's better to have and not need than need and not have. I don't want you to be in a situation where you need to have hand-to-hand combat training and not have it. Rainier nodded at Issei, and the two of them went inside the training room. Legendary, Rainier is the only other person besides Issei that has been inside the training room. Legendary. Not even Akeno, Kiba and Kaneko have been inside. They are being trained in Kuo Academy's track and field. Later at night, after training Rainier, Issei decided to make dinner. Stuffed pork tenderloin, that's what Issei wants to make for dinner. He checked if they still had the ingredients needed or if he would have to butcher a pig for the meat. 3 kilograms pork loin roasting joint. 175 grams manchego cheese, finely sliced. 150 grams membrillo. 2 sage sprigs. Olive oil, for drizzling. 1 head of garlic, cut in half horizontally. 1 thyme sprig. 200 milliliters medium dry sherry, sea salt and freshly ground pepper. The amount of meat is due to Issei, Rainier and Ophis needing more food than a regular person. When Issei started to cook the food, everyone was attracted to it. Mickey, Goru, Ophis and Rainier had their stomachs gurgling in hunger. Once the food was finished, everyone sat down at the dining table and ate. The dinner was silent as everyone savored the food. This is delicious," Rainier said. "She has never tasted anything as good besides the food from Issei's store. Why don't you cook as often?" "That's because my mom loves cooking," Issei said. "If one was to look at the kitchen area, one would realize it's untouched by magic, unlike the rest of the house. I don't want to take that away from her." Rainier nodded and continued eating her food. As for Ophis, she was trying to grab Issei's plate from him. Issei rolled his eyes at her, and he conjured more food. The following day, Issei was too lazy to go to school. So, he sent a duplicate. Issei was roaming around the fountain where Rainier kissed him. While doing so, he met a girl who seemed to have tripped. The girl had blonde hair and green eyes. Her hair flows down to her back, with split bangs over her forehead and a single strand sticking out from the top and sloping backwards. Her attire consisted of a dark teal nun outfit with light blue accents, a white veil over her head with light blue accents, a brown satchel slung on her right hip, and brown boots with black straps in an X-shaped pattern. She also wore a silver cross necklace around her neck. How did I manage to fall?" the nun said. She was rubbing her head. There was nothing to trip on. Seeing the nun, Issei offered her his hand. He couldn't just leave her be. "Are you okay?" Issei asked. He brought his arm out to offer his help. The girl takes it, and he helps her up. "You don't have any injuries, do you?" All Issei wanted to do was help the nun when she seemed to have tripped. As to why he brought her home, he had no idea. Issei didn't realize what was happening until he was inside his house, and his parents and Rainier were staring at him with questioning looks. First, previous ch 10 of 74. Next, chapter 10. The Hyodo house residents were staring at Asia Argento, the nun that Issei might have accidentally kidnapped. How did they know her name? Rainier knew who she was, as Asia was meant to be a new addition to the people residing in the abandoned church. But since Kokebiel interfered with the objective in Kuo, the church was truly abandoned now. Mickey, Goru and Rainier stared at Issei. On the other hand, Issei couldn't look them in the eyes since he had no clue if he actually kidnapped Asia or if she came willingly. "Ahem. Asia, I didn't kidnap you, did I?" Issei asked. He was nervous about what Asia was going to say. Looking at Asia, she shook her head at Issei's question. "Oh, good. Then why did I bring you home with me?" "When I told you that I was looking for the church, you told me that no one lives there and it has been abandoned," Asia explained. She was fidgeting a lot. "Then you invited me to come home with you and that your parents would love me. I wasn't sure what I had to do, but I thought you were a bad person. So, I followed you." "Holy crap. Don't ever do that," Issei shouted. Asia was too innocent for her own good. She might have been in trouble if it was anyone other than him. "You don't know how lucky you are that I was the one that invited you home. If it was anyone else, you could have been in trouble. Don't ever do what you did with me, okay?" I understand," Asia said as she bowed her head. She then brought her head up. Can I ask Miss Rainier a question?" "Sure," Rainier said. She was the one responsible for Asia in the first place. Although, that was before the betrayal of Kokebiel. That's right, Rainier got a message from Kalawarna and Middle that Kokebiel's instructions were bogus. "I'll answer any question that you inquire about." What happened to the church?" Asia said. She was curious since she was sent here to aid the fallen angels with their task. She was meant to heal them in case something happened. "I thought I was meant to help with a task?" "That fell through," Rainier said with a sigh. "One of the fallen angel cadre went rogue. Then after that, one of the people in my team also went rogue. So, right now, the task given to us is over. I even resigned from Grigori." What happens now?" Asia said. She was on the verge of tears since she had no place to go. She was even willing to go with the fallen angels in her desperation. But now, it wasn't even an option. I don't have any place to stay, and I was already excommunicated from the church. I have nowhere to go. Ah. Don't cry, Asia, Mickey said. She was then calming Asia down. Just like my son said, you can stay here with us. If you like, this can be your home. Issei was staring at his mother, and he was shocked. If it was someone other than Asia, would she have taken her in? No, definitely not. Rainier was allowed to stay since she was Issei's girlfriend. Otherwise, Mickey would have kicked them out. No, because she allowed Ophis to stay as well, and that's her knowing that Ophis was the infinite dragon god. Issei was never going to figure out the answer to his question. So, he just shrugged his shoulder and let it go. Honey? Are you sure? Goru asked. He looked at his wife and realized he didn't need an answer as he already knew it. Fine, I know you always wanted to have more daughters. I still can't believe you treat the infinite dragon god as your daughter. Why not? She's in a little girl form, Mickey said. She puffed her chest and continued. Besides, doesn't Issei treat her as a little girl? He would even from time to time carry her in his arm. Yeah, but he's Issei, Goru said. Is his wife really comparing herself to their son, who was able to bully a heavenly dragon into crying? But looking at his wife, Goru saw how happy she was. So, he let her be. I guess another foster daughter is fine. Rainier looked at Issei and spoke. Are your parents always like this? Rainier asked. She's only been around for a little over a week. So, she wasn't sure if Mickey and Goru usually argued. I'm not sure if I ever saw them argue much. I'll give you a bit of warning, Issei said. Rainier was curious as to what it was. When my parents' argument intensifies, leave their vicinity. Or tell them to get a room. Otherwise, you would see them having sex. Seriously? Rainier said. She was skeptical. Wouldn't they notice my presence? They won't, Issei said. He shivered at his words due to a memory that came to mind. I was at the dining table eating dinner when their argument suddenly intensified, and they started making out. They even started stripping while I ate my food. Well then, we welcome you to the family, Asia, Mickey said. Asia felt the warmth of Mickey as a mother, something she's never felt before. I'll ask Issei to make you a room. Huh, wait. Make your room? Asia asked. Isn't it supposed to make your bed, not your room? Oh, no, Mickey said. She understood the confusion. You see, we don't have any extra rooms in the house since the new room was given to Rainier. So Issei would need to make you a new room. Aye, if you don't have any extra room, I don't want to be a bother, Asia said. She didn't want people to go out of their way for her. I can find elsewhere to go. Oh, you don't have to worry about it, Mickey said as she giggled. It won't take more than a minute for Issei to make a new room with magic. Mickey didn't have any problem telling Asia about magic since she knew the existence of fallen angels. Surely, she knew the existence of magic. Mickey looked at Asia and smiled. On the other hand, Issei went upstairs and started to make a new room for Asia. A few moments later, Issei finished the room with furnishing. Asia then bowed to Issei and his family to thank them for giving her a place to stay. Mickey hugged Asia and asked Issei to cook dinner to celebrate Asia joining the family. Issei grumbled a bit, but he got to cooking anyway. He had so many recipes in his head. Issei wanted to cook roast beef with caramelized onion gravy for the main dish. He would need 1 head of garlic cut in half, 5 times sprigs, leaves picked, 1.8 kilograms beef sirloin, 3 to 4 tablespoons olive oil, 4 large onions, sliced, 150 grams plain flour, 500 milliliters red wine, and 1.5 liters hot beef stock. As for dessert, Issei was thinking of honeycomb cake. For the toffee, Issei would need 2 cups sugar, 1/2 cup light corn syrup, 2 tablespoons honey, 1/4 cup water, 2 teaspoons vanilla, 1 tablespoon baking soda, sifted, and flaky salt for garnish. Next, for the honeycomb cake, Issei would need 1 cup granulated sugar, 1 cup hot water, 1 cup plus 2.5 tablespoon bread flour, 3/4 teaspoon baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon baking soda, 1/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon sweetened condensed milk, 4 tablespoons unsalted butter, melted and cooled, 5 eggs and 2 teaspoons vanilla extract. Lastly, Issei would need 1/2 cup heavy cream, cold, 1 tablespoon honey, and a tiny pinch of salt for the honey whipped cream. While Issei was cooking, Asia smelled the fragrance of the food. It made her stomach grumble. The smell alone was stimulating her hunger. But she wasn't the only one. The rest of the Hyodo household residents felt their stomachs grumble. Sorry, Asia apologized. She felt embarrassed that her stomach gurgled loudly. I've never smelt such fragrant food before. There's nothing to be embarrassed about, Miki said. She then pointed at Rainier. She had the same reaction the other day. Heck, didn't you hear our stomach gurgling? When Issei cooks, it's normal for a person's stomach to grumble since the food's fragrance can stimulate one's hunger. After a while, Issei came back from the kitchen. He set the food down on the dining table and called everyone over. Seeing the food made them hungrier than the fragrance. Ophis wanted to eat the dessert, but Issei smacked her hands and told her that she would eat proper food first before desserts. Ophis pouted, but Issei did not falter. Instead, he patted Ophis in the head, and the infinite dragon god blushed. Miki has patted Ophis' head before, but it never had the same effect as Issei, and she certainly never blushes. Asia saw this and wondered what it would be like to have Issei's hand on her head. She's never been treated that way before. When she was with the church in Europe, they only cared about using her healing abilities. But now that she is here, she plans to live the best life she can. First, previous ch 11 of 74. Next, chapter 11. The next day after school, Issei trained Kiba, Kaneko and Akeno. But Issei was currently sparring with Kiba. Sloppy, that's all Issei could tell about Kiba's stance. A single parry causes Kiba to lose his balance. He seemed to like bringing his sword too far forward. Hence, when parried, Kiba would lose his balance as the entire weight of his body isn't evenly spread. Instead, it's all in front of him. Your stance is wrong again, Issei said. He sighed as Kiba seemed to consistently break his stance. I told you to stop changing it because you want to increase your speed. Keep doing that, and I can promise you, you'd die in a real fight. The stance is not just there for balance, but to also make sure that you have no opening. I know, you already told me that countless times, but my old stance has become a habit, Kiba said. He was ashamed that he was having trouble fixing his stance. It wasn't his fault as he had never had a proper instructor before. Well, Okita Soji did train him for a little while. I'm trying as best as I could, but I'm struggling. If that's the case, then you have to go through the training I made you do last week, Issei said. Kiba shivered. The brutality of the training was ruthless. He never wants to experience it again. Either you try and fix your stance now, or I make you correct it with my special training. Kiba's stance tightened immediately, and all the openings he had earlier were gone. At least in the eye of those with lesser experience and talent than Issei. Seeing that Kiba could fix his stance, he went for a strike. Kiba held his balance with the proper stance even when he parried Issei's strike. He also wasn't making any useless movement as he did earlier. Issei smiled at this since Kiba was learning. However, Kiba dropped to the ground a few minutes later due to exhaustion. See? You can do it after all, Issei said. He looked at Kiba, who was on the ground punting. He then took out a sword from his inventory. This wasn't something he received from the gacha but his own creation. He stabbed the sword into the ground. Once you're done, I want you to try and take this sword out of the ground. But be careful. The lower your control over your demonic power, the more it will burn you. Wait. Why do I have to do this? Kiba asked. He had excellent control over his demonic power. He didn't need help with it. Or so he thought. I have control over my demonic power. I don't need training for it. Really? Issei said. With his fiery eyes' golden pupils, he can tell that Kiba has a rudimentary control of his demonic energy. Enough for it not to accidentally kill anyone or let it leak. But that's it. He has no finesse or fine control over it. If you think you have great control over it, then pick up the sword without being burned. With confidence, Kiba touches the grip of the sword. Immediately flames erupted from the sword. It was so intense that Kiba was flung 20 meters away from the sword. Ha ha ha. Brilliant. Issei said. He looked at Kiba with a smirk. You call that having control over your demonic powers? With finer control over one's demonic power, the longer they can last in a fight since they aren't wasting any energy and only using what is necessary. On the other hand, you may not be leaking demonic power, but you use excessive amounts. Kiba was stubborn and tried to grab the sword by the grip once more, and the result was the same. So, Issei made him sit cross-legged and meditate. He was told to feel his demonic power and make the energy as still as water. Only then would he be ready to try and pull the sword from the ground. While Kiba was being made to meditate, Issei called Akeno over. He asked her to pull the sword from the ground. This was to show Kiba what would happen when someone with control over demonic power touches the sword. Nothing. No flames erupted since no demonic energy was seeping into the sword. Goes to show how much control Akeno has over her demonic powers. Then again, it's not surprising since Akeno is a pure magic user. That would change soon since Issei believes everyone should learn hand-to-hand combat. Before the training ends for the day, Issei wanted to have a spar with Kaneko to see how far she has progressed with her Taekwondo. Kaneko was eager to have a spar. She couldn't wait to show Issei how far she's gotten and how hard she's been training. Kaneko used Bo Bup to get behind Issei instantly, but Issei was able to easily follow her movement. Hence her connecting attack, Orang, had to be cancelled as it would be a waste of energy to follow through when it would obviously be blocked, dodged, or parried. So, she changed her attack to ground drawer. Unfortunately, Kaneko wasn't strong enough to push Issei. She knew this. That's why she followed it with a Beck Rock. But that was still not able to make him move a single step. So, Kaneko stepped it up a bit more. She performed a Goryo, two horizontal kicks performed in quick succession at the head of the opponent. Yet, it still did nothing. After a few more minutes of sparring, Kaneko was getting exhausted. So, Issei ended the spar. For some reason, Kaneko saw Issei smiling at her. She was confused. She wasn't able to do anything against him. "Well done, Kaneko," Issei praised her. Kaneko was not sure why Issei was praising. "I know that you think you don't deserve the praise since you couldn't do anything against me, but your stance and connecting attacks were all wonderfully executed. There were some issues here and there, but you're doing well." Kaneko blushed. She was getting high praise from someone with whom she stood no chance, but it felt nice to have her skills acknowledged. With the sparring over, the training for the day was over. Everyone headed back inside the orc room for a bit of rest. 30 minutes later, Sona and her peerage arrived in the ORC. Akeno said. She looked at the Sona and her peerage. "What brings you all here?" "Both of us have just increased our number of servants," Sona said. She then looked at Issei, who wasn't paying attention to her. "So, I thought we should exchange greeting again." "Correction," Rias said. She gave a sigh. "You were the only one to have increased their number of servants. On the other hand, I have the same number." "Right, I forgot about that," Sona said. She forgot that Rias couldn't bring Issei to her peerage for several reasons. "I forgot that I was the one that suggested you make a deal with him instead. Him being here means you were able to make a deal, yes?" "I have," Rias said. She had a smile on her face since she's seen how much stronger her peerage had become with Issei's tutelage. "And the part of my deal has already been paid." "Oh," Sona said. With a powerful person like Issei, Sona thought he would ask for something quite challenging to achieve. But to hear that Rias already has done her part of the deal was shocking. "That's interesting. What was the exchange about?" "Issei would train my Akeno and Kiba. And I would help him look for a person," Rias said. But as it turns out, the person he was looking for was Akeno. So, I was able to complete my end of the deal in no time. "Oh, right," Akeno said. She looked at Issei, and she told him who it was in front of them. "Issei, this lady's name is Sona Citri. She's the next head of the House of Citri, an upper-class devil family." "I know who she is," Issei said. He did because Serafal would talk about her a lot. Issei is a bit of an otaku and loves magical girls. So, he went to a convention nearby and met Serafal. With fiery eyes, golden pupils, he knew the new friend he made was a devil but didn't care. "I've heard all about her from Serafal." Akeno, Rias, Sona, Kiba and Tsubaki were surprised that Issei knew Serafal. As for Kaneko, she was surprised, but she was too busy enjoying Issei's petting of her head. Rias then continued. "How do you know Leviathan-sama?" "Leviathan," Issei said. Serafal was someone he occasionally spoke to when a new magical girl episode came out. Issei's life isn't always about training, after all. He has his own guilty pleasure. We occasionally contact each other. "Why you call Leviathan-sama as El Leviathan," Tsubaki said. Her stoic look broke. She was so shocked that Issei would call one of the strongest female devils Leviathan. That's absurd. Hey. Don't blame me for that. Issei said. It was Seraphal that insisted he called her that. She was the one that insisted on being called that. I wanted to call her either Sarah-chan or simply Sarah, but her eyes, her puppy eyes got to me. So, I started calling her Leviathan. Sona facepalmed at what Issei said. Her sister definitely made Issei call her Leviathan. There was no doubt about it. Anyways, I only came here to introduce my new servants and say that we're heading to get familiars next week, Sona said. She then fixed her glasses that slid down her nose. Since you don't have any new members, you wouldn't have a need to enter the familiar forest. While Sona and Rias spoke to each other, Issei smelt a scent coming from somewhere. He sniffed the air and smelt it on Saji. Upon coming closer to him, Issei realized what the smell was. Dragon. Oh, you have a dragon-type sacred gear, Issei said. Saji was surprised that Issei figured it out. Your dragon scent has a different smell. That could only mean that you're an evil dragon. Or at least your sacred gear is. I only know of one evil dragon that was turned into a sacred gear. Vritra. But yours is incomplete. You're missing parts. Which one do you have? What the? Saji said. Even Sona was surprised that Issei could tell that Saji was a dragon-type sacred gear wielder. How did you figure that out? By smelling. Yup. Your scent is weak, but it's there, Issei said. Though, I wonder why your dragon's soul is separated into multiple pieces? How are you even smelling my dragon scent? Saji asked. He was confused about how Issei could smell his weak dragon scent. Even Kaneko was barely able to smell it. That's a secret, Issei said. He was then curious if Saji had complete control over his sacred gear. So? How good are you with your sacred gear? Do you want to have a spar with me? Saji was about to accept, but Sona shut him up before he could accept. Unlike the others of her peerage, Sona knows the power of Issei. And she wasn't going to let Saji do something stupid like accept the sparring invitation when she knew he stood no chance of even scratching the opposition. First, previous ch 12 of 74 next, chapter 12. A week later, Issei was in his class. He was bored out of his mind. There's nothing to do until later after school, where he gets to train Ria's peerage. The only thing he's been hearing all day was the school bell, indicating how much time remains before school ends. If one looks at Issei, one will notice that he has a toy dragon perched on his shoulders. Teachers were confused about why Issei had it, but since Issei was the top scoring student of the second year, they let him be. With none the wiser, the toy dragon was not a toy. This was Diedrich. Issei finally let him out of the dimensional farm. Thankfully, Issei was suppressing Diedrich's dragon aura and powers. Otherwise, he would be broadcasting the fact he was there. Then again, he didn't care if people knew. Even Issei didn't care if people knew. Kiryu Aika, the perverted girl of Kuo Academy, has been observing Issei intently in the past few weeks, and she noted that he was acting weird. She saw that he would head to the orc every day after school. This is strange since the orc doesn't accept new members. Kiryu isn't jealous that Issei gets to be part of the orc. It's not like she's interested in the occult anyways, peeved. Damn it. How come he gets to join the orc, and I don't? Aika thought. She was jealous of Issei. Aika has sent applications to join, but she was always refused. So, how is Issei part of the orc? I don't get it. Issei has never even shown any interest in the occult. So, how is he a part of the ORC and not me? I'm so jealous. Aika thought. She would confront Issei and ask him how he got accepted into the most desired club. I'm going to get into the orc one way or another. Well, maybe I won't do anything illegal. That's just not me. Nonetheless, I will find a way in. As for Matsuda and Motohama, Issei's friends, are in a similar situation as Aika, not because of their interest in the occult, but because they are jealous that Issei gets to be close to the two great ladies of Kuo, Rias and Akeno. There were even times that Akeno would come to Issei's class and tease him with her sadist kink, but he wouldn't react. This made for a very fun rumor about Issei being gay, as he would always follow Kiba after school. This rumor was courtesy of Matsuda and Motohama, who were subsequently beaten up by Issei. Tisk. Why does he get to be close to the Rias and Akeno? I'm great too. Motohama thought. He was extremely jealous of Issei since they were friends. Yet, Issei gets a different treatment from the female body. Damn, Bishonen. Does he think he's so great because he has muscles and can do kendo? Please. I can beat him up. Well, I think I'll stick to making rumors. Stupid Issei and his stupid popularity with the ladies. Motohama thought. He was crying in his glasses due to jealousy. What does he have that I don't? I'm more handsome than him. Girls are even into guys with glasses these days. Damn it. If the girls are into glasses these days, why do they avoid me? HMPH. I hope he enjoys the rumors about him. Damn Issei. And damn his popularity. Motohama and Matsuda thought at the same time. Jealousy sure can make a person hateful. After school, Issei headed to the Orc to meet with Rias and the others, but he noticed Aika following him. So, he set a rune trap in front of the Orc building as he entered. Aika followed, but she stepped on the trap. Immediately, she started feeling dizzy, and she suddenly turned around and went home. Or that's what should have happened, but Aika, for whatever reason, resisted the magic. Issei saw this. He was intrigued. It seems that Aika has resistance toward magic. Meaning she might have a talent for magic. Interesting indeed. For now, Issei used a more powerful variant of the magic rune from earlier. This time, Aika was affected, and she went home. Issei shook his head, and he headed inside the Orc room. There, he was surprised that there was a silver-haired maid inside. Issei had never met her before, but Rias seemed to know who she was. So, he just shrugged his shoulder and went inside the room. Oh, Issei, Rias said. She forgot to mention to Issei that she would be having a meeting. Well, it was too late now. She was going to apologize to Grafia for having an outsider, but when she saw Grafia's face, it looked horrified. She seemed to be looking at the toy on Issei's shoulder. Grafia? Is there something wrong? Heavenly Dragon, Grafia said. Although Issei suppressed Diedreg's powers, people as powerful as Grafia can still sense his powers. I am possible. The Heavenly Dragon, Diedreg, should be sealed in the boosted gear. How is he here? Oh ho. So, you recognize me, Diedreg said. He was still perched on Issei's shoulder. But this time, he was actively showing his powers. The temperature in the room rose to immense levels. Everyone in the room got scared. I wondered when someone would come along and realize who I was. It seems like it didn't take long. Grafia was afraid of Diedreg. If the dragon was to attack now, she wouldn't be able to protect Rias and her peerage. So, she secretly made a teleportation circle to save Rias and the others. That's when she saw something absurd. Issei smacked Diedreg in his head for making the temperature in the room so high that the devils were uncomfortable. Can you stop that, you stupid idiot, Issei said. Diedreg was rubbing his head as Issei hit him hard enough that it bypassed his dragon scale's protection. Do you want me to punish you again? Wait, Diedreg said. He showed fear when Issei said that he was going to be punished. I'll stop. Just no more punishments. Grafia and the others were shocked. Shocked that the mighty heavenly dragon was afraid of someone. And it wasn't the playful, ooh, I'm scared of you, PFFT, kind of scared. No, Diedreg genuinely showed fear of Issei's punishment. That's one of the heavenly dragon? Rias asked. She didn't know how to feel. She's heard so much about the heavenly dragons, but seeing one, it didn't live up to its legends. Huh? I was expecting more. While everyone was looking at Diedreg, a magic circle appeared out of nowhere and produced a pillar of fire. This was a teleportation circle that had been bedazzled. What emerged from the magic circle was a man. The person that emerged from the magic circle was a tall man with short blonde hair and dark blue eyes. His outfit consists of a burgundy blazer with gold embroidery on the right with matching pants and black dress shoes. Underneath his open blazer is a white dress shirt that is not fully buttoned, giving a slight view of his chest. HMPH. I haven't been to the human world in a long time, the man said. He then looked disgusted when he saw Issei, who seemed to be human. He then brought his attention to Rias. I've come to see you, my beloved Rias. Hey, Issei called for Akeno. He was as curious as to who the man was. Who's that? He seems like an ass. That man is Lord Riser Fenix, Akeno said. She didn't like the man, and one could tell in her voice. He's a pure-blooded high-class devil, the third son of the House of Fenix, and the fiancé of the next head of the House of Gremory. I heard about the Phoenix clan, Issei said. He knew them due to Diedrich. Aren't they the devils being labeled as immortal due to their ability to regenerate at high speed? Yes, they're the ones that I compared the divine regeneration of the vermilion bird with, Akeno said. She was surprised when she first learned the regeneration magic and its potency. Foo. I wonder which is better. Divine regeneration of the vermilion bird, or the Phoenix regeneration. Riser then sat down on the couch where Rias was and started drinking the tea on the table. He even had his hand on Rias as soon as he sat down. Ah, the tea prepared by Rias Queen, Riser said. He had a smirk on him the entire time as he ran his hand on Rias. Is most delicious. Enough of that, please, Rias said. She was annoyed with all the touching. Riser, I've told you this before, but I'm not going to marry you. But Rias, Riser said. He was being nonchalant about Rias' rejection. I think that your family's circumstances are desperate enough not to allow you to be so inconsiderate. I don't plan to bring my house to ruins, Rias said. She was not happy about Riser's implications. I plan to make you part of mine. But I will marry whomever I wish. It's a matter for all devils to keep pureblood devils, Riser said. He still had a smirk on his face. Whose numbers all but vanished in the last war, from dying out. Your father and Sirzex decided on this arrangement with the future in mind. Issei was bored of the argument between Rias and Riser. It's not like in his house, where he needs to be wary of his parents arguing since they would spontaneously have sex anywhere. The argument here was dull. At some point, the argument became very heated. But Graphia, the maid, stopped it from escalating. My lady, Lord Riser, Graphia said. She was very professional. Since I'm here on orders of Sirzex, I will not hold back one iota. When told such a thing by the one known as the ultimate queen, Riser said. He was still nonchalant about the entire thing. Even I become fearful. Issei then suddenly yawned. This irked Riser. He was a show-off, so he got angry when someone was yawning at his performance. Riser attacked Issei. Graphia saw this and wanted to stop it, but she couldn't as Issei was very close to Riser's reach. That's when it happened. Diedrich roared. The roar was so mighty that half the building blew up. Thankfully, Issei had already sent everyone into the mirror dimension. One single roar of Diedrich and Riser had all his bones shattered. Riser was on the floor, bloodied. Riser's regeneration worked overtime to save his life. Yet, even with all his demonic powers drained, he was still not healed. As for Rias and the others, they were fine as Issei protected them with a barrier. They know that the dragon on Issei's shoulder is the real deal. First, previous ch13 of 74 next, chapter 13. After the meeting with Rias and talking about the last resort, raiding game, to deal with engagement, Graphia headed back to the underworld to report the happened. But she wasn't sure if she should mention the heavenly dragon's resurrection as it could cause chaos, and besides, the dragon itself was being handled by some, which was the scariest part. When Graphia headed to Sirzek's office, she knocked and was given permission to enter. Inside, Graphia saw Sirzex was speaking to his wife. But she still saw Sirzex gesturing her to come in. Graphia. How is Rias doing in the human world? Sirzex said. He was a Siscon. So, when he got a chance to ask about his little sister, he took it. I hope she's doing well with her peerage. Has she made any addition? Rias is doing well on her own, Graphia said. She was bowing her head as she answered. As for her peerage, she hasn't made any addition. However, I felt that the powers of her current peerage have grown tremendously. That's wonderful. Sirzex chirped. He was worried that Rias might not have been training her peerage. As it turns out, he has nothing to worry about. I was afraid that Rias wouldn't be training her peerage. I guess I was worried for nothing. No, Rias hasn't trained her peerage, Graphia said. When she first heard that Rias had employed someone to train her peerage, she was skeptical. But after meeting Issei, she was no longer doubtful. Rias has employed a man named Hyodo Issei to teach Kiba with the sword, Akeno with her magic, and Kaneko with her martial arts. I've also taken the liberty to investigate Hyodo Issei. He happens to be a child of two humans. Regular humans. What? Sirzex was confused. Why would Rias hire an ordinary human to train her peerage? Graphia? What's going on? Why would Rias do that? You're making the wrong assumption, Sirzex-sama, Graphia said. She knew that Sirzex probably thought that Issei was a regular human due to his parents. Hyodo Issei is anything but normal. According to Rias, in her observation of Issei's swordsmanship, he surpasses Okita Soji. His magic surpasses mine, and his martial arts, well, Rias had no one to compare it with. And the last thing to note about Issei is that he has the Red Dragon Emperor. Oh, so, Issei has the boosted gear wielder with him, Sirzex said. That was surprising. Throughout history, the Heavenly Dragon's wielder never followed orders. I wonder how he was able to do it. You don't understand, Sirzex-sama, Graphia said. Sirzex had his eyebrows raised at the fear in Graphia's voice. I wasn't talking about the boosted gear wielder. He literally has the Red Dragon Emperor with him. The real Red Dragon Emperor. Issei was treating it like a pet. Sirzex was shocked at the information he had just received. The actual Red Dragon Emperor? The one that was turned into a Sakura gear? What? Sirzex didn't know what to think. He looked at Graphia to see if she was joking, but the fear in her eyes was real. Is Rias and the others okay? Sirzex shouted. He then stood up from his seat. Are they being threatened? Calm down, Sirzex-sama, Graphia said. However, she saw that Sirzex wasn't going to calm down. So, she spoke. They aren't being threatened. I already told you earlier that they were fine. Issei doesn't seem to be the time to attack for no reason. Hearing that Rias was fine, Sirzex was able to calm down. But there was still anxiety in him. It is, after all, a heavenly dragon-level threat. Are you saying the man named Issei isn't a threat? Sirzex said. Graphia nodded at him. Then why did you have the look of fear in your eyes? Because Lord Riser thought it would be a good idea to antagonize the young man, Graphia said. She wasn't showing fear because she was afraid of being attacked. Graphia was scared because of how easily Issei could block Didrake's roar. Graphia knew she would have been at least bruised from the power that was displayed by the Red Dragon Emperor. I was scared at the prospect of how powerful the man who could control the Red Dragon Emperor is. That's quite worrisome, Sirzex said. He was worried for Rias. I think I need to pay my sister a visit. Unfortunately, Rias has asked me to inform you that she's not to be disturbed as she prepares for the raiding game, Graphia said. She still remembered how serious Rias was when she told her to tell Sirzex not to disturb her. Rias told me that if you disturb her before the raiding game in 10 days, she will no longer call you her brother. But, danger, Sirzex said. He was saddened that he could go and meet with his sister. Why, Rias? Why did you have to be like this? Graphia looked at Sirzek's wife, who was giving an apology. Graphia just sighed as she's used to Sirzek's antics. Back with Rias on Earth. She was on her way to Sona to tell her that she would be off for the next 10 days to prepare for the raiding game and to tell Sona never to piss Issei off. Once she arrived in the stucco room, Rias knocked. On the other side, she heard Sona ask her to come in. Rias. Sona called. She was confused as to why Rias would be visiting her. What do I owe the pleasure for your visit? Well, I spoke to Graphia. She told me that if I want to cancel the engagement, I will have to win a raiding game against Riser, Rias said. She sighed. So, I will be taking 10 days off from class. I just wanted to inform you of that. And also, to warn you. Do not piss off Issei, ever. I learned that he has control over the Red Dragon Emperor, Diedrich. And I'm not talking about the sacred gear wielder, but the dragon itself. Ha ha ha. Nice joke, Rias, Sona said. She didn't believe Rias since everyone knew the heavenly dragons had been sealed. Come on, if you wanted to prank me, you should have thought of something better. This isn't a joke, Rias said. Sona looked at her in the eyes and saw that she was serious. I just witnessed the power of Diedrig's single roar. It was so powerful that it overpowered Riser's high-speed regeneration. What? But how? Sona said. She was getting a headache. How was she supposed to watch over someone capable of controlling a heavenly dragon? What are we going to do about him? Rias said. She wasn't planning on doing anything. Issei wasn't a threat as he had done nothing. And he has been in Kuo for a long time. It's safe to assume he doesn't plan to destroy the place. Nothing. We do nothing. Issei isn't doing anything that would endanger us, nor is he planning to take over. Just leave him be. Besides, I had already spoken to him. Issei would follow me to an estate in the mountain I can use for training. With Issei, he was heading home in his VMAX. Today, he didn't have time to watch the sunset since he had to wait for Rias to complete her meeting, then train Kiba, Akeno and Kaneko. Once he was home, Rainier was waiting for him at the door. She was acting as his wife. She greeted him and made a joke. "So, Issei," Rainier said. She was blushing. She couldn't believe that Mickey could convince her to do this. "Would you like dinner or a bath first? Perhaps you would prefer me." Issei was holding his breath. He didn't even know that he was holding his breath. Issei then had a smirk as he looked at Rainier. "Don't even joke about that," Issei said. He was smirking. He then got close to Rainier and had his fingers on her chin. "I might just end up picking you." Issei then kissed Rainier, who blushed hard, then proceeded to faint. Issei's laughter could be heard in the entire house. Mickey, who was watching, was proud of her son. "Mom, I know you're there," Issei said. He was still smiling. "This was your idea, wasn't it?" "Well, I thought Rainier needed some help with being bolder in her approach," Mickey said. She can tell how much Rainier loved Issei, but she's too timid and afraid of moving forward in their relationship. "That's not to say that I didn't think it'd be funny." Issei shook his head at his mother's antics. When she felt like it, she would do childish things. But, no matter how she was, Issei loved her. Even if he was the subject of her pranks. Issei picked up the fainted Rainier and brought her to his room. He placed her in his bed as he thought it would be funny if she woke up beside him in bed. Okay. Issei did inherit his mother's mischievous behavior. First, previous ch 14 of 74. Next, chapter 14. The following morning, Issei got up and took a shower after spinning his gacha. He got nothing noteworthy. He then had breakfast with his family, kissed Rainier and said goodbye. Issei then got on VMAX and headed to Kuo Academy, where he would be meeting Rias. From there, they all headed to the mountains of Kuo. For the start of Kiba and Akino's training, their gravity runes were increased to double their usual ones while they ran up the mountain. As for Kaneko, it was 4 times the usual intensity of the gravity rune. Once they were up the mountain, Issei told them to give him 100 laps. Kiba and Akeno were glaring at Issei, but he didn't care. Akeno tried to seduce Issei to lessen her training's intensity, but it failed. Issei even conjured fire and threw them at Kiba and Akeno to get them running. Kaneko is Issei's favorite since she never complains, and she would even smile when she completes her task. Plus, he loved giving her head pats. Once Kiba and Akeno were done with their laps, they panted for air. Then they saw Kaneko, who was barely even sweating. How are you not tired?" Kiba said. They train as much as each other. So, why was Kaneko not sweating as much? It couldn't be because of the rook piece since that only gives a boost in strength, not stamina. In fact, it's the night piece that boosts stamina. Did you even complete 100 laps? I did, Kaneko said. She then skipped to where Issei was, and she received her head pats. Did I do good? You did great, Kaneko. Well done, Issei said. He then got to thinking. Maybe he should reward Kaneko's hard work by cooking her dinner later. You know what? I'll give you a reward later. I think you deserve it. Kaneko thought. She didn't know Issei could cook. At least he didn't look like someone that cooks. You can cook? I can, Issei said. He smiled at Kaneko. This wasn't the first time people thought he wasn't one to cook. I'll surprise you at dinner. The next task Kiba, Akeno and Kaneko were given was to spar with Issei. The look on the face of Rias, Akeno, Kiba and Kaneko when they saw Issei duplicate himself. It was hilarious. Kiba was being pushed to complete his comprehension and mastery of Demon Sealing Strike, as he would be Rias' trump card. Only he had the power to stop the healing of Riser. But at the same time, Kiba was also being taught Divine Regeneration of the Vermilion Bird, so he could continue fighting as long as he had demonic power. For Kaneko, she was being taught the other techniques of Taekwondo such as Ho Grab, Rising Back Kick, Reverse Sweeping Kick, Blue Dragon Kick, Twin Dragon Kick, etc. Kaneko's mastery over Taekwondo was great. She's diligent and willing to learn. Hence the speed of her progress was incredible. As for Akeno, the real Issei wanted to speak to her about her heritage. Issei knows that she's a fallen angel. He could also see that she still resents her fallen angel half. So, Issei, did you bring me away from the others to have fun? Akeno said. She smirked and giggled while she swayed her hips as she walked toward Issei. You know the things I'm into. If you can't take it, the safe word is sugar apples. That's not why I brought you here, Akeno, Issei said. He sighed at Akino's attempt at flirting with him. I wanted to speak to you about your fallen angel heritage. I don't know what you're talking about, Akeno said. She didn't know how Issei found out, but she was scared that Issei might no longer like her. Fallen angels, after all, don't have the best reputation. I'm a devil, not a fallen angel. Akeno, I have special eyes that allow me to see different types of energy, Issei said. That was one of the fiery eye's golden pupils' abilities. I can tell the difference between the aura of a devil and that of a fallen angel. You, Akeno, have both. I want to know why you're holding back your powers as a fallen angel? I hate it. I hate my fallen angel blood. Akeno shouted. Due to her father being unable to save her and her mother, Akeno developed a hatred for fallen angels. She has developed a sense of self-loathing towards her fallen angel nature. If I could choose, I would choose not to have any fallen angel blood as it disgusts me. I see, but you hating your fallen angel blood, is you denying your mother's love for you and your father, Issei said. He wanted to help Akeno stop her self-loathing due to being half fallen angel. Then he thought, what if Akeno's mother was here? Would she be able to help her lessen Akeno's hatred for fallen angels? Issei didn't know, but it was worth a shot. Tell me, Akeno. Do you wish to see your mother again? I wish that I could see her again, Akeno said. She was not in tears. She is the only one that ever cared for me. What if I told you that I can help you bring her back? Issei said. He didn't have much use for the extra resurrection stones with him since he had already given one to each of his parents, Asia and Rainier. Would you like that? It's impossible, Akeno said. There was a sacred gear that was able to bring people back, but it's nowhere to be found. I don't think it would be possible. Akeno, listen to me. All you have to do is answer yes or no, Issei said. He then looked Akeno in the eye and asked his question. Do you wish to bring your mother back to life? Why yes. Of course, I would, Akeno said. She didn't know why Issei asked her these questions, but she answered them honestly. I would do anything to have my mother back. Good, Issei said. He then took out a stone from his inventory and handed it to Akeno. Take it and wish for your mother back. What's this? Akeno wiped her tears and looked at the stone in her hand with confusion. It looked like an ordinary stone, except that it was multicolored. This is a stone. It's known as the Resurrection Stone, Issei said. Just from the name, Akeno realized what it was meant to do. But is it real, or is it a practical joke? No, Issei isn't that type of person. Think of the person you want to bring back to life, and they will come back to life. Akeno didn't know what to think. Issei isn't the type to joke about such things, but her logic tells her that bringing back the dead is not entirely impossible. However, can a plain-looking stone really bring people back to life? Nevertheless, Akeno gave it a shot. She thought about her mother on the day of the incident. Akeno thought about the fond memories she had growing up with her mother. Not a moment later, the resurrection stone lit up the entire area. Once the light dimmed, Akeno saw a person in front of her that looked almost like her. No, this person resembles her mother perfectly. She was even wearing the clothes the day she died. Hey Akeno, the woman said. She then moved to hug Akeno. I missed you so much. Mom? How is this possible? Akeno said. She was not mistaken. The person hugging her is her mother. What's going on? What's going on? You were the one that brought me back to life, Akeno's mom said. She looked at her daughter in confusion. You were the one that brought me back to life, right? Technically, yes, Akeno said. She then looked at Issei and pointed at him. But he was the one who gave me the item to do so. Akeno's mom looked at Issei. She remembers him clearly. I remember you, Akeno's mom said. You were there that day. You fought off those fallen angels sent to kill Akeno and me. Thank you. My name is Hamejima Shuri. Hyodo Issei, Issei said. He then bowed at Shuri, who was also bowing to him. I'll leave you to reunite with your daughter. Issei went back inside the mansion rather than to Kiba or Kaneko since they were already trained by a duplicate. Whilst inside, Issei met Rias, who was reading a book and making strategies for the raiding game. Oh, Issei, how is the training going? Rias said. She saw how hard her peerage was training. So, she came to the library to read books about strategies to try and find the best way to defeat Riser. I saw how hard you were pushing them. Well, This 10 days of intense training was a deal, Issei said. When Rias found out that she could cancel the engagement with a rating game, she took it and made a deal with Issei about doing intense training. As long as you keep your end of the deal of letting Asia enter Kuo and not inviting her to anyone's peerage, then this deal is worth it. I did some investigation on you before when I was planning to invite you to my peerage, Rias said. Issei already knew that. But I didn't know you had a sister. Asia is my foster sister, Issei said. It was the truth, and his parents even got official documents. She's new to the family. Since she arrived, I can see it in her eyes how much she wants to experience school life like a normal person. I see. No wonder I had no information on it. I'll inform Sona about our deal, Rias said. She may be a devil, but she does honor her deals rather than look for a loophole. By the way, how I saw you brought Akeno to a place to talk to her, was there something wrong? You see, I knew that Akeno was a fallen angel and that she was holding herself back, Issei said. He didn't like that Akeno would sometimes hold back her magic since her fallen angel's light manipulation would sometime manifest itself when she got serious and had this look of disgust on herself. I wanted to help her get rid of her hatred of fallen angels so that she would stop loathing herself. I've noticed that for quite a while, but I didn't know how to tackle the subject matter. I've never experienced what Akeno has, Rias said. She was saddened that she could do nothing about it. So, where is she now? Did you succeed? Akeno is back where I left, Issei said. He then looked in the direction that Akeno was. She's currently reuniting with her mother. Rias nodded her head. She then went back to read the book in her hand. A second later, she realized what Issei had said. Rias ran to the window and looked at the location that Issei was looking at. Sure enough, Akeno was speaking to someone that has a striking similarity to her. First, previous ch 15 of 74. Next, chapter 15 with Issei training Rias and her peerage. One would assume he wouldn't have time for Rainier. But that's not true at all. For one, Issei has images of Icon. He can send duplicates to train each of Rias' peerage members. 2. Issei can create portals to head home every day. Hence why, Issei is currently sleeping in his room back home. Once Issei woke up, he would do his usual routine. Roll the gacha, shower, get changed, and have breakfast. However, today, he wasn't heading to school, but he's also not going to train Rias' peerage. No, he plans to leave that to a clone of his. Issei wants to take his girlfriend on a date. This time, he hopes Rainier will be able to enjoy it to the fullest without worry. Issei has planned out their day. First, they'd go watch a movie. Then after that, they could go around and go clothes shopping like they did last time. Then for lunch, Issei prepares a picnic basket so that they can go to a park and have lunch there. After that, they could go for a stroll in the park as they did on their first date. And lastly, they head home. If Rainier would like to continue their night, Issei wouldn't say no. After an hour of cooking, Issei set all the food in the picnic basket and sent said basket to his inventory to ensure that all the food was as fresh as they are now. Issei looked at the time and saw it was about time Rainier would be waking up. So, he made breakfast for Rainier and the rest of the family. When Rainier arrived in the kitchen area to look for something to eat, she saw Issei making her breakfast. Hey, here you go, Issei said as he put an egg on her plate. Issei smiled as Rainier enjoyed his food. Are you busy today? I'm not, Rainier said. She was enjoying the food of Issei in the morning. This was new. Why? Do you have something planned? Yeah, I hoped we could go on a date today, Issei said. Rainier, who was about to put a spoonful of food in her mouth, stopped and looked at Issei. Our first date was not the best since you were worrying about something. So, I thought, this time, we can enjoy our time to the fullest. I would love that, Rainier said. She was glad Issei was asking her on another date. She wanted to go on another one, but she was waiting for a time when Issei wasn't busy. I've wanted to go on another date, but I knew that you were busy. You shouldn't worry about those things. I can always make time for you, Issei said. He wasn't lying. He can always send his duplicates to take his place in school, etc. So, today, I have things already planned out. Though, I was thinking if you would like to go on a stroll in the park later or do something else. Rainier was thinking. Taking a stroll in the park is great, but she thought of something else. How about instead of a stroll in the park, we go on a drive? Oh, that's not a bad idea, Issei said. If they're going on a drive, Issei knows where they can go. I even have a great destination. While Issei and Rainier talked about their date plans, Asia, Miki, Goru, and Ophis woke up and headed to the kitchen. As soon as they were there, their food was ready. Later in the afternoon, Rainier and Issei left for their date. But first, Issei sent a few duplicates to the mountain where Rias and her peerage were. With that done, Issei and Rainier headed to town and went to watch a movie. The movie they chose was a cheesy rom-com, but they didn't mind. In fact, Issei and Rainier even had fun watching the cheesy part. The whole time they watched, Rainier had her hand on Issei's hand. She was all smiles. After the movies, Issei took out his VMAX, and he and Rainier headed to a cliff area in the mountains of Kuo. During the ride, Rainier was holding tight to Issei. She may be able to fly and maneuver in the air with ease, but it was different when riding a motorcycle as there weren't many obstacles in the sky. Unlike flying, riding a motorcycle has a lot of obstacles, especially when Issei rode the bike into the forest to get to their destination. But, Rainier thought it was worth it when they arrived at the cliff that viewed the entire Kuo town. Seeing Kuo like this was different from seeing it from a top view. It was beautiful. Issei set a cloth on the grass and took out the food he had prepared in the morning. Issei and Rainier talked about themselves as they did during their first date. But this time, Rainier was no longer telling half-truths. Issei was laughing at some of the antic that Rainier, Middlet and Kalawarna got to. When it got dark, Issei and Rainier headed back home. When Issei looked around, he saw a letter from his mother that said they would be back around 10 p.m. They were shopping for Asia and Ophis clothes. When Rainier saw the letter, she headed to her room and got changed. And a moment later, she called Issei to her room. When Issei entered her room, he saw Rainier in sexy black lingerie. Rainier pulled Issei to her bed, and she started kissing him. Issei could tell that Rainier was horny. She wanted this, and so did he. Issei flipped Rainier over and started to kiss her on the neck, on her collarbone, and eventually, Issei took her tits out of her lingerie and sucked on them. Rainier moaned. Knowing that no one was home, Rainier did not care how loud she was. While she enjoyed Issei's tongue on her nipples, Rainier felt that Issei stopped sucking on her tits but started pulling on her nipples. Moments later, she felt Issei move down to her wet pussy, and she suddenly felt a jolt as Issei removed her panties and licked her pussy. Once more, Rainier felt a massive jolt, and she moaned as loud as she could to stop herself from coming. Oh, Issei. That's it, right there, Rainier moaned. She was enjoying Issei's tongue on her pussy. Rainier would time to time lift her lower body in the air and use her hand to push Issei's face further into her pussy. That's it. Issei loved to hear Rainier moan. So, he started to insert a finger inside her pussy while he continued to lick her clitoris. Issei moved his finger with a rhythm that Rainier was enjoying. While doing so, Issei felt that Rainier was ready to release. He picked up the paste and made Rainier cum while still sucking on her pussy. Ah, Rainier came. She then dropped into the bed. That was amazing. I've never been able to make myself feel like this on my own. I'm glad you liked it. Issei smiled. His face was covered in Rainier's juice. Shall we continue, or do you need time to recover? Give me a moment to recover, Rainier said. But she then pushed Issei to his ass. She took his cock out. But while I do so, let me give you the same treatment you gave me. Though, I apologize if I'm no good since this is the first time I do this. Rainier then dragged her tongue up his shaft, already feeling it stiffen as she licked it. When she reached the tip, she kissed it before slowly wrapping her lips around the crown and humming in pleasure. Rainier kept her eyes locked with Issei's. She started bobbing her head back and forth, going as the head of Issei's cock scraped against the back of her throat. It was definitely bigger than she'd anticipated, and it continued to grow the more she sucked on it. Issei was struggling not to bust a nut immediately from Rainier's blowjob. This was the first time someone had actually tended to him like this. Sure, he jacked off every now and then, but this felt so much better than his hand. Ah! Rainier, this feels amazing, Issei groaned. Rainier's soft lips and saliva coating his cock sent what felt like electrical pulses through the rest of his body every time she bobbed her head. For someone who hasn't done this before, you're amazing. Rainier. I'm gonna cum soon, Issei said. He can feel it. He was reaching his limit. I'm going to cum. It happened before Rainier could take Issei's cock out of her mouth. The sensation of her lips brushing past his crown had been the last straw that broke the camel's back, and Rainier was suddenly hit in the throat with Issei's cum. Rainier reflexively took out Issei's cock from her mouth, and ropes of cum shot out and landed across her face. She tried to catch some of it in her mouth, but the damage was already done. "Whoa, you came a lot," Rainier said. She then wiped the cum of Issei that was all over her with her hand, and she proceeded to swallow it. "It's quite salty, but not bad." Rainier then looked at Issei's cock, and it was still hard. Good, because she was wet and was ready to take the monster whole. Rainier took off her lingerie, grabbed Issei's cock and stroked it. Issei's horniness reached a new level, and he flipped Rainier once more. With a yelp, Rainier was on her back. "Go on, Issei. Stick your cock into my wet, dripping pussy," Rainier said in a seductive voice. To drive the point home, she reached down and spread her folds apart, exposing the moist walls of her pussy. She shivered a bit from excitement, eagerly awaiting the feel of his throbbing cock inside her. "Come on, Issei. Don't be shy." Issei wasted no time in accepting Rainier's invitation. He practically leapt from the bed, looming above her with barely restrained lust in his heavy breathing. He positioned himself over the fallen angel, trying to line his cock up properly before plunging it into her pussy. With a single thrust, Issei shoved his cock into Rainier. Rainier gasped as she felt her inside be filled with Issei's cock. Rainier put a hand on Issei's chest as she moaned from the thrust of Issei's hips. Issei would sometimes speed up his thrust, then suddenly slow it down. He would then give her a kiss all over her neck before increasing his speed. Rainier then flipped Issei and started bouncing on his cock. Issei grabbed her tits and started fondling them. Rainier then bent down to kiss Issei on the lips. Feeling that Rainier was moving too slowly, Issei grabbed her hips and increased the pace. As a surprise, he shoved a finger inside her ass. This made Rainier moan loudly, which caused Issei to get excited and increase the pace even further. When Issei felt that Rainier was about to cum, he flipped her on her back once again. Issei did a fast and deep thrust into Rainier. He felt that he was reaching his limit. Where do you want it?" Issei asked as he groaned. Rainier heard his voice, but she wasn't registering what he was saying. Issei saw this. So, he asked again. "Outside or inside? I won't last long." "Outside. I know of your dragon side," Rainier said. She was having a hard time answering Issei as she was also reaching her climax. "I know how potent a dragon's sperm is. As much as I love you, I haven't thought of having a child yet." Issei understood. He then increased the pace of his thrust. He then heard Rainier climax. So, Issei pulled out and cum all over Rainier. He then dropped beside Rainier. Both of them were panting hard due to how long they had been having sex. "So? You love me, huh?" Issei teased. Rainier playfully hit him in the chest. "Well, I love you too." Issei then kissed Rainier. They both then fell asleep. First, previous ch 16 of 74. Next, chapter 16 the following morning. Issei and Rainier woke up late due to their activity the previous night. Issei kissed Rainier on the lips before getting out of bed. He then went to his room and took some clothes to change into after a shower. As soon as Issei entered the shower, Rainier went in too. Issei didn't mind this, and they both enjoyed their shower. When they were done, they headed downstairs. In the living room, Issei and Rainier saw Mickey, Goru, Asia and Ophis. Ophis looked normal as she usually does. But the rest had dark circles in their eyes. "What happened to you guys?" Issei asked. This was the first time he had seen his parents have dark circles in their eyes. And Asia had one as well. What was going on? Why do you all have dark circles on your eyes? "This," Mickey said. She gestured on her face. "Is all your fault. We gave you time last night, but who knew that you two would go at it until 1 a.m. Poor Asia fainted when she heard the noises Rainier was making. Issei and Rainier were shocked. However, Rainier was more so. She wanted to dig a hole and just disappear. 1 a.m. That's how only they did it for. They got home at 7 p.m. It didn't even feel that long. Issei and Rainier then gave an apologetic look toward Asia. Except Asia couldn't look them in the eye. She keeps picturing Issei and her doing it. Asia didn't know why. "You have very powerful magic eyes," Goru said. He then looked his son in the eye. Please, next time, can't you put on a silencing spell or something? We don't want to hear our son and his girlfriend having sex. Ha! Now you know how I feel when you and mom would spontaneously have sex after an argument in front of me, Issei said. He was pointing at his father's face. Said father felt embarrassed since he and Mickey do, in fact, forget their surroundings when they're at home. But, yeah. I'll make sure to put up a silencing spell next time. By the way, eyes, Mickey said. She then gestured to Ophis. Ophis is feeling a bit felt out. She wants to stay with you. Can you bring her around today? Sure, no problem, Issei said. He then went to Ophis and kneeled down so that he would be at eye level with her. Hey, next time, you can just ask me if you want to join me, okay? Ophis nodded, and Issei picked her up as he usually does. Anyways, I have to go, Issei said. His parents and Rainier then looked at him. I'll be heading to the mountain to continue Rias and her peerage's training. I'll be back by 7 p.m. Do you mind if I join you? Rainier said. She didn't have any issues with devils, and she wanted to compare how Issei trains Rias and her peerage. I promise I won't cause any trouble. Issei just nodded at her, and he opened a portal. In the mountain estate of Rias, Akano, Kaneko, and Kiba were ready as they usually are. But this time, Rias was joining them in training. When they saw Issei, they were going to greet him. Until they saw Ophis and Rainier. Akino's disgust over the fallen angel was lessened ever since she got her mother back, but there were still traces of it, but that's not why she stopped. Again, Issei brought with him another insane being. Rias rubbed her temple. The last time, Issei brought one of the heavenly dragons. Sure, why not, right? But this time, he brought something even more absurd. Issei was carrying the infinite dragon god as if she was nothing more than a little girl. Can he be any more insane? Issei? Rias called. She was afraid to say anything that might trigger Ophis. You know that the little girl in your hands is not a little girl, right? Ophis? Of course, I know she's not a little girl, Issei said. The prospect that Issei knew the identity of Ophis and yet still continues to treat her like a little girl scares them. Who in their right mind would do that? Issei, that's who. Well, since you already know who she is, I don't have to introduce her to you guys. Issei then looked at Ophis and pointed to the people in front of him one by one. He introduced Rias and the others to Ophis. Issei knew that introducing Rias and the others might be in vain. Ophis doesn't remember the names of those she has no interest in. She won't attack, would she? Rias asked. She still didn't know what to think. She was in the presence of the infinite dragon god. I don't want to die at such a young age. Don't worry, she won't attack you. Unless you take her food, Issei said with a laugh. Rias and the others sighed a breath of relief. If Issei can joke, then it should be fine, right? By the way, the food thing, that's true. The only person Ophis doesn't attack is me. Rias once again tensed up. She looked at Kaneko and thought she would have to separate her from Ophis as she might accidentally eat the dragon god's food. From inside the kitchen, Shuri came out and informed everyone that breakfast was ready, and they should all take a seat at the dining table. Shoot. I forgot to eat breakfast, Issei said. He then noticed that Rainier and Ophis were also hungry. You don't mind if we eat here, do you? I brought my own food. Technically, Issei brought no food, but he can use his mystic arts to conjure them something to eat. Issei, Shuri greeted. She then came close to him. Do you want to eat with us? I made plenty of food. If you don't mind, Issei said. Seems like he didn't have to conjure food. He then looked at Ophis. Never mind, he would still need to conjure food. We're a big eater. If need be, I might cook some more. Kaneko's ear propped up. Unlike the others, Kaneko has tasted Issei's food. She loved it so much that she worked even harder to get another reward. So, hearing that Issei might cook, she got excited. Issei saw this, and he sighed. He created a duplicate and asked it to cook as much as possible. Rias and the others are still amazed at Issei's magic to create a duplicate. The strength doesn't decrease no matter the number of duplicates. In their mind, they all thought that it was a cheat ability. Imagine 100 Issei with all the same strength? Isn't that insane? While Issei's duplicate was cooking, everyone started eating. Shuri is a talented cook, just like her daughter, but Issei believes she can be better. This is delicious, Issei said. He was eating and enjoying the meal. Now I know where Akano got her talent in cooking. Thank you, Issei, Shuri said. She then looked at Kaneko and Office. But from the looks of it, someone prefers to wait for your cooking. Kaneko felt embarrassed since she realized one of the people Shuri was talking about was her. As for Office, she didn't care. She only likes eating Issei and Mickey's cooking, except that she would eat anything when it comes to sweets. Also, she would eat any food Issei conjures for her. So, she was willing to wait until the food made by Issei was done. Don't mind, Office, Issei said. He looked at her, and he patted her head. Office is a picky eater and would only eat food prepared by myself or my mother. Oh, my, she has the same name as one of the dragon gods, Shuri said. She smiled at Office. Is she your sister? Oh, she's not, but I consider her family, Issei said. Office then buried her face in Issei's chest as she sat on his lap. By the way, she is the infinite dragon god. A loud clang was heard at the dining table. That was Shuri dropping her spoon in shock. She thought she heard wrong. The little girl was the infinite dragon god. This must be a joke. You're quite funny, Issei, Shuri said. She then giggled in her hand. I almost believed you. It's not a joke, Issei said. He repositioned Office as she was slipping off his lap. Office is the infinite dragon god. I met her 2 years ago. She came to my house as she smelt my scent as a dragon. Eh? Hold on, I think I heard wrong, Rias said. She was sure that Issei was meant to be human. Did you say dragon? As in Diedrich like dragon? Yeah, due to circumstances, I'm actually half dragon, Issei said. He then proceeded to transform his right hand into a dragon's claw. See? Pretty cool, right? Even Diedrich was shocked when I became a half dragon. Rias was getting more and more surprised by Issei's existence. She would have understood if Issei had transformation magic that temporarily made him into a dragon, but that was not the case. Issei's hand transition from human to dragon was natural, not some transformation magic that Yukai used to look human. A moment later, everyone smelled an amazing fragrance coming from the kitchen. Kaneko, Office and Rainier became excited as they knew it was Issei's food. 3 duplicates of Issei headed their way with a plethora of food. Office, Kaneko and Rainier were salivating at the excitement of eating Issei's food. Smelling the fragrance alone has made the other members of the ORC and Shuri hungry. Even after they just ate breakfast, they all held their stomach and salivated at the food coming their way. First, previous ch 17 of 74. Next, chapter 17. The day of the rating game has arrived. Issei was permitted to attend the match. He was watching in the broadcasting room with Sona and Tsubaki, who ensured that the broadcast to the underworld went off without a hitch and was wary of him. Why are Sona and Tsubaki wary of Issei? That's because Diedrich was on top of his head. They didn't know what could set off the dragon. Riser and his peerage were teleported to their corner in school, which happened to be the principal's office, when the stage of the rating game was set. Rias was teleported to the Orc room with her peerage. The room is an exact replica of the original Orc room, so you'd think the teleportation failed, but it didn't. Everyone, the announcer said. I am Graphia Lucifuge. I have been appointed judge between the Gremory and the Phoenix family. For the battlefield, I took the suggestion of Rias and Riser and prepared a replica of Kuo Academy, the educational facility that Rias attends in the human realm. Rias' main base is the Orc room in the old schoolhouse. Riser's main base is the principal's office in the new schoolhouse. Graphia explained everything clearly. Meaning, pawns can be promoted when they manage to invade the enemy's schoolhouse. Rias then presented a red glowing spherical to her team. She instructed them to wear it on their ear since it's a communicator. Rias then began to tell them about her plan. As the rating game began, everyone went to their assigned positions according to Rias' plan. Issei watched as Kaneko snuck into the gymnasium. She had to face Schwalen, Eel and Nell and Mira from there. 1 rook and 3 pawns. Kaneko decided to face all the pieces in the gym, which wasn't as hard for her now as it would have been before her training, as Schwalen is quite the rook. Schwalen is a close combat fighter like Kaneko, but the difference in experience was sky high. Or it would have been if it wasn't for Issei's training. Kaneko didn't waste any time and used bow bup, a movement technique that allows one to appear behind, next to, above, etc., to their opponent instantaneously. Kaneko used this technique to get in front of Xuelin instantly and connected it with Orang, an elbow smash performed on the opponent that sends a shockwave through them. This technique was so powerful that it rattled the entire body of Xuelin, and she vomited blood. She was eliminated. When Il, Nell and Mira saw how Kaneko could take out Xuelin, they immediately acted. Il and Nell approached Kaneko together, but Kaneko was able to separate them with a single kick each. The twin was sent flying in 2 different directions. When Nell was able to get up, she used her chainsaw and attacked Kaneko, but it was pointless as Kaneko used Ho grab, a kick used to grab an opponent in a lock position. The fighter feints a reverse kick with one leg and uses that leg to hold the arm of the opponent. It is mainly used to break an enemy's guard. It can be connected with other techniques, such as spinning top kick, which Kaneko did, a technique performed by spinning 180 degrees and kicking the opponent in the face, followed by another kick with the other leg. This was enough to eliminate Nell from the battlefield. Il then got up from her stupor when she was pushed back by Kaneko earlier. Seeing her sister get eliminated made her angry. She ran towards Kaneko without a single plan. She revved her chainsaw to the max, but it was pointless as Kaneko used Bo Bup to get behind her and use Fang on her back, smashing her to the ground. Fang is a technique performed by attacking with both elbows in a downward direction. Il was eliminated. Finally, Kaneko only had one opponent left, Mira. Kaneko wasted enough time against the others. So, she no longer wanted to hold back. Kaneko used Bo Bup one last time for today to get in front of Mira, and she connected it with Baekdu, a knee attack delivered to the opponent, causing them to fly at a considerable distance. Mira shot back like an arrow, and she smashed into the gymnasium wall, eliminating her. Issei, who was in the broadcasting room, smiled at how amazing Kaneko had become. However, he knew she could be better by accessing her latent Yukai powers, but it would take time before he could help Kaneko through whatever was making her suppress her Yukai half. Her development is tremendous, Sona said. She was shocked at how strong Kaneko was. Sona looked at Issei, and she saw him smiling, feeling proud of Kaneko. You were the one that taught her those techniques, weren't you? That's right, Issei said. He looked at Sona, and he saw how she was intrigued by him. Why do you ask? You aren't planning to employ me to train your peerage, are you? No, but you are quite the mystery, Hyodo Issei, Sona said. Issei was strange, but not in a bad way. Everything around him is just so different. From what she gathered from Rias, Issei treats the infinite dragon god like a little girl without said dragon killing him. Everything around you is mysterious. Heavenly dragon, infinite dragon god. You being a half-dragon even though both your parents are human. None of you makes sense, but that's what is attractive about you. Sona's eyes twitched. Did she just really say that? She called Issei attractive. Sure, he's handsome, sweet, strong, and caring. At least from what her investigation told her, but to be attracted to him? Well, that's new for her. Ahem. I meant intriguing, Sona said. For the first time, Issei saw the Stoic Student Council president blush. I meant to say that you're quite intriguing as an individual. You're strong, but you aren't like the others. You don't desire to show off your power or use it for nefarious reasons. Well, thanks for the compliment, Sona, Issei said. He was smiling at the sight of the blushing student council president. If he wasn't with Rainier, he might have considered her a prospective girlfriend if she liked him back. Anyways, we should continue watching the rating game. In the forest near the track and field, Kiba was fighting against Bulant, Marion and Sharia. He beat them with his speed and the mist obscuring the 3 pawns' vision. Kiba beat his opponent with ease, but that's not his real opponent. As of now, they were waiting till Riser came out of his nest. While waiting, new opponents of Kiba has appeared. Carlamine and Cyrus, both of which are Riser's knights. Carlamine was a wielder of a sword and a dagger. As for Cyrus, she was a wielder of a Zweihander. Kiba engaged them. Unlike before, Kiba was not only a speed-type fighter with his sword but also a technique-based fighter. Carlamine and Cyrus engaged Kiba, but no matter how they slashed and thrust their weapon at him, Kiba would always be a step ahead and block, dodge or parry their attacks. With one of Kiba's new techniques from Issei, he slashed Carlamine and Cyrus 9 consecutive times, which overlaps each other. This was 9 live style. Kiba targeted and slashed Carlamine and Cyrus' upper arm, collarbone, windpipe, temple, diaphragm, rib, chest, pelvis, and thighs simultaneously at tremendous speed, faster than the speed of sound. There was no doubt that this technique eliminated them. Not far from Kiba was Akeno going against Riser's queen, Eubeluna. Akeno was smirking at her opposition as they were shocked at what they saw. Eubeluna blasted Akeno, but the moment the cloud of dust was gone, they all saw Akeno unharmed. Once more, Eubeluna blasted Akeno, but they all saw it this time. Akeno was injured, but they saw flames emerge from her injuries, and it was healed instantaneously. "I do not appreciate anyone blasting me," Akeno said. Her sadist nature was surfacing. She was giggling at her thoughts of bringing pain to her enemies. "Let me show you how to bring pain to your enemy." Akeno summoned her lightning. But this isn't just any lightning. This was Descent of the Lightning Dragon, a magic spell she learned from Issei. Plus, she combined it with her holy powers, courtesy of her fallen angel blood and a little training from Rainier. The lightning dragon descended from the sky and slammed into Eubeluna. However, it did not eliminate her. Instead, Akeno used the holy energy of the attack to make Eubeluna suffer. Eubeluna tried to escape the power of Akeno, but she was not strong enough to resist it. Eventually, she was eliminated without having the ability to retaliate or even use the Fennec's tears with her. Isabella, one of Riser's rooks, saw that Akeno was a magic user. She thought that if she got close to her, she would be able to defeat her. With her strength as a rook, she felt that she would be able to overpower Akeno physically. Oh, how wrong she was. The moment Isabella got close to Akeno, she felt power emit from Akeno. That's because Akeno used super strength of the white tiger. She punched Isabella in the chest and sent her flying and smashing into multiple trees, eliminating her. Riser was shocked at the announcement that he heard from Graphia. All of those that were eliminated at the same time. Schwalen, Nell, Eel, Mira, Bulant, Marion, Sharia, Carlamine, Cyrus, Eubeluna, and Isabella were eliminated simultaneously. When Riser got out of his nest, in front of him was Rias, who had her hands folded under her chest. Without warning, she used her power of destruction to eliminate Ni, Li, and Mahai, who were standing beside Riser. Riser was pissed. This wasn't the outcome he hoped for, and Ravel, his sister and Bishop, wasn't doing anything. "Give it up, Riser," Rias said. She hoped for Riser to forfeit rather than be defeated as she didn't want his reputation ruined. Her family and the Fennecs were still allies after all. "You should forfeit rather than lose the rating game. You can still save your reputation by telling everyone that you allowed me to win." "HMPH. You think because you eliminated most of my peerage members that you've already won," Riser said. He was seriously pissed. "I'm sorry to say, but I'm still an immortal. You have no way of beating me." "Is that so?" Rias said. She sighed at Riser's stupidity. "Well then, you've made your choice." As Rias moved away from the spot she was standing on, Kiba appeared. Riser seemed insulted when he saw that Rias was making her knight fight him rather than herself. "You insult me, Rias," Riser said with anger. "Do you think that a low-class devil like him is enough to beat me?" "We'll never find out unless he tries," Rias said. She then looked at Riser with pity. "You'll regret fighting him." Riser HMPHED at Rias and attacked Kiba with his flames. With Kiba's sword, he slashed and stabbed at Riser, but to no avail. Why would he do this? Simple, he wants Riser to think that he was winning. After a minute of fighting Kiba, Riser became arrogant as he saw that nothing done to him would stick as he would quickly regenerate. This was what Kiba was waiting for, an opportunity to end Riser. Kiba slashed at Riser's chest. But rather than continue fighting, he stopped and stood on his spot. "Ha ha ha ha. I told you that you can't beat me, Rias," Riser said. He was laughing maniacally. "There is nothing you can do to stop our engagement. Not." Kiba smirked as it finally affected Riser. Unlike Issei, he hasn't mastered the technique he used. So, it took a while to take effect. But the result spoke for itself. Riser was turning into stone. "What have you done to me?" Riser shouted. For the first time in his life, he was scared. "What have you done?" Riser completely turned into a stone. What Kiba used against him was the Demon Sealing Strike, a sword technique that creates a demon sealing aura to seal those struck by it. Everyone watching the broadcasting of Rias' rating game was shocked. No one has ever seen someone deal with a phoenix like Kiba did. They didn't know it was possible. Yet, here it is, a low-class devil turning Riser into stone. Suffice it to say, Rias won the rating game. First, previous ch 18 of 74. Next, chapter 18. A week after the rating game, Issei's life has gone back to normal. Well, normal for him and his family. At the moment, Issei was waiting for Asia to get changed to her school uniform as it would be her first day at school. But Asia was so nervous that she struggled to change into her uniform. So, Rainier helped her calm down and changed to her uniform. After a while, Asia went out of the house and saw Issei waiting for her. Issei patted the back seating area of VMAX, and Asia got on. This would also be the first time Asia got to ride on VMAX. When they got going, Asia held Issei tightly as she was afraid of falling off. Issei even had to drive slowly as he wasn't to scare Asia more than she already was. When they arrived at Kuo, people were looking at Issei and Asia. This is an everyday occurrence for Issei but not for Asia. Sure, Asia would get attention back in the church, but they were there for healing, not for any other reason. Since it was Asia's first day at school, Issei didn't know which class she would be assigned. So, he sent her to the teacher's office to get her timetable and introduce her to her classroom. Inside Issei's classroom, the teacher entered and asked everyone to sit down and be quiet. The teacher then told everyone that they had a new student joining them. The guys were excited and hoped it was a girl. As for the girls, they were hoping for handsome men like Kiba and Issei. When Asia heard the teacher tell her to enter, she did. This excited all the guys as a girl was joining their class. "My name is Asia Argento," Asia said. She bowed her head as she introduced herself. "I'm sure there is a lot I'm unfamiliar with, but I offer my regards." All the boys roared in excitement. "She's a blonde beauty," Matsuda shouted. "Bust 82 centimeters, waist 55 centimeters, hips 81 centimeters. Good," Motohama announced to everyone. "I'm currently leaving at the Hyodo Issei's home," Asia said. She was smiling the whole time as she finally got to be like a normal person. "So, if you need anything from me when I'm not around, you can contact Issei, and he would be able to relay it to me." "What?" All the boys shouted and stared at Issei with evil eyes. On the other hand, Issei just yawned at their intimidating look as he saw them as nothing more than a puppy, a very ugly puppy. Motohama then spoke. "What's going on? How are you and that blonde beauty living under the same roof? How is it you've been triggering all the right flags?" Matsuda said. He then looked at Issei with tears. "First, you get to spend time with the orc members such as Akeno and Kaneko. Now, you have a blonde beauty living in your house. Is she your girlfriend?" I'm not Issei's girlfriend," Asia said. She was blushing when Matsuda mistook her for Issei's girlfriend. "Issei's girlfriend is Rainier. She lives with us in his house." "How? You already have a girlfriend, and you've never introduced us," Motohama said. Issei had one of his eyebrows raised. "Right, good call. Still, you get to enjoy your girlfriend every day while we do it with Mr. Right Hand." Upon hearing Motohama say Issei enjoyed his time with his girlfriend, Asia blushed so hard that she nearly fainted. Once more, she was reminded of the night she heard Issei and Rainier doing it and imagined her in Rainare's place. While Issei was dealing with the pesky guys in class, Asia was having fun conversing with the other girls in class. Aika even approached her. Issei facepalmed as she heard Aika ask Asia if she ever saw Issei's junk. Asia hasn't, but she has tried imagining it once or twice, well, countless times. "Asia, your hair is so pretty," Kate said. "I'm quite jealous of it." "Yeah, and the guys in class are enchanted by it, too," Aika said. She was in a teasing mood. So, she had Asia as a target. "So, Asia, have you ever seen Issei naked?" All the girls around Asia who heard Aika's question had their ears propped up to hear Asia's response. Not completely naked," Asia said. She saw Issei get out of the shower with only a towel around his lower half. But it was by accident. I didn't know he just finished showering." "So, tell us the details," Murayama said. She fancied Issei for a while now, but she never got the courage to act upon it. But now it was too late as he already had a girlfriend. However, that doesn't mean she isn't interested in him anymore. "What's his body like? Are his abs as toned as I think it is? Or does he have a bit of a belly but doesn't show when he's dressed?" He's very toned," Asia said. She was blushing hard at the memory of seeing Issei half naked. I remember his abs looked sculpted. I wanted to touch it when I saw it. Ooh, Aika said. She has a smirk on her face. It's too bad you've never seen Issei fully naked. I wanted to ask you if you know what his junk looked like. My size scouter isn't giving me feedback when I look at it. Size scouter, Asia asked. She's never heard of it before. What's that? It's my special ability to see men's sizes, Aika said. She was proud of her size scouter. However, whenever I use it on Issei, it never works. Not in the sense that it gives me the wrong size, but it never gives me any response. It's infuriating to know that my size scouter doesn't work on someone. Sorry, I couldn't help, Asia said. She liked helping people. So, when she couldn't help Aika, she felt terrible. I'll try and see if I can find out for you. No. Don't do that, Kate shouted. She couldn't believe what Asia was saying. That's illegal. Don't go peeping on someone. I don't want you to become like the perverted duo. At the end of the day, Asia was going around to different clubs to have a look and see if she was willing to join any of them. While that was happening, Issei headed to the Orc to kill some time. You see, Issei's employment with Rias was over. The training of Kiba and Akeno was only to last for a month. That's already passed. However, Rias said that he was welcome to come to the Orc at any time. So, now that he needed to kill some time until Asia was done surveying the clubs, he headed to the Orc. When he got there, Rias and her peerage were discussing the number of contracts they could fulfill. This month's contract numbers are, Akeno 11, Kaneko 10, and Kiba 8, Rias said. She was proud of her peerage, being able to complete high numbers of contracts. Well done, all of you. Please, continue working hard. Too bad I wasn't in the double digit like Akeno and Kaneko, Kiba said. He sighed. I would have gotten 10 if it wasn't for two weird requests. One wanted me to summon a Cthulhu-like creature. The other wanted me to turn him into a magical girl. Huh? Hold on, Issei said. That sounded familiar to him. Is the person that summoned you to turn them into a magical girl named Miltan, or at least go by that name? Yeah, Kiba answered. How did you know? Because I know him, Issei said. He sighed. Miltan was a mutual friend of his and Serafal. Serafal and I are friends with him. We met him at a magical girl convention. Which reminds me, I have plans for this Saturday. A convention would be in town, and Serafal invited me. Leviathan Sama has invited you, Akeno said. She then remembered that Issei had told everyone that he was in contact with Serafal. Oh, my. Is it a date? That's quite scandalous, knowing that you already have a girlfriend. Though, I don't mind being your mistress as well. It's not a date. We're just spending time together, Issei said. He then rolled his eyes at Akeno. We're just going to go around having fun, taking pictures, getting lunch. All in all, spend a day of being together. This is totally a date, isn't it? From what you described. Yeah, it is, Rias said. This was the first time she had seen Issei act like this. She found it cute. Maybe you weren't told that she has invited other friends as well? No, Sarah said that it would be for just the two of us, Issei said. He sighed. How could he not realize it sooner? I will have to tell her that I already have a girlfriend. You know, it's not uncommon for a person as powerful as you to have multiple spouses, Rias said. She then took a sip of her tea, made by Akeno. Especially since you're a male half-dragon. Believe me, you'll be attracting many women. Maybe, you've even attracted quite a few in recent years or recent months. Oh, he certainly attracted me, Akeno said. She then gave a giggle in Issei's direction. She licked her lips. Like I said, I don't mind being your mistress, Issei. Issei rolled his eyes at her. He didn't believe Akeno was actually interested in him. To Issei, Akeno was just being playful. Oh, how wrong he was. Ever since she spent time with Issei, her affection for him grew. Sure. Akeno's affection all started because he was the boy that tried to help her years ago, but recently, her feelings for him have grown deeper the more she got to know him. And that was significantly amplified when he brought Shuri back to life. Let him go? Not a chance. She would fight tooth and nail to be with him. Besides, she and Rainier spoke about it when they were training together. Elsewhere, two church representatives were lurking around the old, abandoned church that Rainier and her cohorts used to occupy. This place is in ruins, the first person said. Are you sure we're in the right place? I heard there was a disturbance here recently caused by the fallen angels, the second person said. The person looked around the dusty and moldy church. Probably a falling out. It's getting late, the first person said. Taking off the hood, we see that it was a girl. Are you sure we're supposed to be meeting here? There's no way I'd be wrong, the second person said. Taking off the hood as well, we see it was another girl. I spent time here with my parent as a child. The second person then showed a picture of her with another child. It was Issei. This was the childhood friend of Issei, Shithu Irina. And the person with her was Zenobia Quarta. Not far from the church duo were Middlet and Kalawarna. They returned to Kuo town searching for Azazel as they were tasked to find him by Shemazai. At the same time, they were to locate Kokebiel and inform them of his objective in Kuo. First, previous ch 19 of 74. Next, chapter 19. The following morning, as Sona and her queen headed to school, they met Irina and Zenobia, the church duo. Sona didn't know the purpose of the church representatives, but she felt it wouldn't be a simple matter since they were carrying a holy sword. After school, Issei was preparing to head home with Asia, but he was called in by Sona Citri. Issei didn't know what it was about, but he didn't mind helping out. He found an empty classroom nearby and used his portal to send Asia home for the day. Issei then made his way to the stucco room. There he was met with Sona, who was waiting for him patiently. She asked Issei to take a seat, and Tsubaki poured tea for him to drink. So? What is it you need me for? Issei asked. He knows that Sona is the type of person that would take care of any problem heading her way. If you're asking for my help, it couldn't be a simple matter. That's right, it's not, Sona said. She sighed at the situation at hand. This morning, 2 people from the church contacted me. They told me that they wanted to speak to Rias. I don't know what they wanted, but I accepted their request. I need someone to mediate the meeting to ensure that a bloodbath doesn't happen. I know no one other than you to do so. When is this taking place? Issei asked. He didn't mind helping, but he would have to decline if it was on a Saturday. I can accept any time, but this Saturday. That's not a problem since the talk should be tomorrow, Sona said. She then leaned onto her table with her elbow and chin on her hand. I'm hoping nothing bad comes about in the conversation with Rias and the church representative. No problem, I can do so tomorrow, Issei said. He had no plans until Saturday. So, this is a great opportunity to kill time. I'll be there. Is there something else you need from me? It's my sister. She told me she would be in town, Sona said. She sighed. Her sister could be a troublemaker. I was hoping you could maybe show her around? She'll be here on Friday. Oh, you don't have to worry about Sarah, Issei said. He did have plans with her on Saturday. The plans I had for Saturday was with her. We're heading to a magical girl convention. Issei felt a demonic power in the vents of the stucco room. This demonic signature was something he was all too familiar with. Issei smiled and was planning on fulfilling a promise long ago. I don't get it, Sona said. She was confused about Issei's personality. You're this smart and powerful guy, but you're interested in magical girls. It doesn't make sense. Hey! Don't go dissing magical girls. Besides, can't a guy have some guilty pleasure? Issei said. He then thought of something. Sona would look good in a magical girl outfit. By the way, you look good in the magical girl outfit you're wearing. Sona looked confused at what Issei said. She wasn't wearing a magical girl outfit. But the moment she looked at her outfit, she was indeed wearing a magical girl outfit. Sona blushed hard. She was about to scold Issei, but he was gone. Hyodo Issei! Sona shouted. She was so embarrassed for wearing a magical girl outfit in front of her peerage members. I'll pay you back for this. If Sona wasn't shouting, she would have heard camera clicks in the ventilation system. However, all Sona and the rest of her peerage heard was Issei's laughter. Then suddenly, a rune around Sona appeared. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it was Issei's doing. Sona asked her peerage to leave the room for a moment as she had to change her clothes. While changing, she admired the magical girl outfit's elegant look. But she didn't want to be seen wearing it no matter how much it enhanced her natural beauty. She took it off and put on a new pair of school uniforms. Only for it to transform into another magical girl outfit. She screamed. I've never heard Sona Kaichu scream like this before, Rhea said. She was afraid to enter the stucco room. She sounds ready to kill. It seems like Hyodo Issei has the talent for bringing out the other side of a person, Tsubaki said. She was a bit regretful that she could never bring this side of Sona out. Although Sona might look angry, Tsubaki knew Sona wasn't. She knew that Sona might even be admiring herself in the mirror as she spoke to Rhea. It's quite refreshing to see her like this. Really? I think it's scary, Rhea said. She didn't want to come anywhere near Sona with the way she was at the moment. She sounded like a banshee earlier. Sona then opened the stucco room door. Everyone saw that she was wearing a different type of magical girl outfit. If the outfit made her look elegant and gorgeous earlier, this new one made her look like a seductress. Saji saw Sona, and he fainted. Where is he? Sona said. She was going to kill Issei. I'm going to make him pay. No matter how many times I change, it turns into a magical girl outfit. They had no answer to Sona's question as they didn't know where Issei had gone. As for Issei, he was with Serafal, who arrived early and took pictures of Sona, who had a different magical girl outfit. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Serafal said. She hugged Issei. This was like a dream come true to her as Sona didn't like wearing a magical girl outfit. Hey he. Now I have hundreds of photos with Sona in a cute, sexy, alluring magical girl outfit. You're welcome, Issei said. He felt that Serafal was around earlier, but he also realized that she was hiding from Sona. Well, I did tell you before that if I had the chance, I would let you see your sister in a magical girl outfit. And you did as you promised, Serafal said. She then kissed him on the lips. This shocked Issei. That's just a little reward. About that, Sarah, Issei said. He didn't know how to tell her that he already had a girlfriend. But he thought it would be best to be straightforward. I have to tell you, I already have a girlfriend. What? When did this happen? Serafal asked. She hoped to someday invite Issei into her peerage, but she found out just how strong he was, and she was incapable of turning him. So, she thought maybe she could be with him not as his master but as his girlfriend. But now, he had a girlfriend. Unacceptable. Who is it? I will not stand for this. Sarah, calm down, Issei said. The only to calm down an enraged Serafal was to hug her and make her forget what made her angry in the first place. Or have Sona act cute in a magical girl outfit. Please calm down. Serafal hated that Issei was capable of easily calming her down. She hugged him back, and she started sniffing him. This was something she does occasionally when she's around Issei. How Issei didn't know she was being affectionate is a mystery. Okay, I'm calm. I won't kill her, Serafal said as she gritted her teeth. She then took a deep breath to remain calm. Now, can you tell me who this hussy is? I don't know if I should, Issei said. She was only teasing Serafal. You seem to still be out for blood. Wah. I am not, Serafal said. She turned around, crossed her arms on her chest and pouted. I just want to talk to this person to ensure that she's not taking advantage of you. If you want to meet her, she lives at my house, Issei said. Serafal looked envious. She wanted to live with Issei before, but she couldn't since she was a Satan. Serafal had responsibilities. But you have to promise me that you won't attack her. I won't. I know that if I did, you'd hate me. I don't want that, Serafal said. She wasn't going to do anything that would make Issei hate her. She had already lost him as a potential boyfriend. She wasn't going to lose him as a friend. Although, it's not uncommon for strong people to have multiple spouses. I promise I'll just speak with her. I just want to ask a few questions. Issei smiled at her, and he brought her home. This wasn't the first time Issei had brought Serafal to his house. Miki and Goru know about her being a devil. Though Serafal was Serafal, Issei's parents couldn't see her as a devil. Serafal was so cute and playful to be a devil, but they knew Issei wouldn't lie about it. First, previous ch 20 of 74 next, chapter 20. On the way home, Issei and Serafal were admiring all the pictures of Sona in a magical girl outfit. Sona, she seems so natural in a magical girl outfit. It's such a shame that she refuses to wear it on her own. Sona has a certain je ne sais quos about her. When they arrived at Issei's house, Serafal was excited to meet Miki and Goru. She found them fun to be around. But once they entered, they saw that there were other guests around. 4, to be exact. Issei went to the living room, and he saw 4 people, 2 of which were in cloaks, but the other 2 he was familiar with. Kalawarna and Middlet, who happens to be playing with a toy dragon on her lap. Kalawarna, Middlet. What are you girls doing here? Issei asked. Of course, he knew they were friends with Rainier, but they don't seem to be here only for a visit. And he also couldn't believe they were playing Diedrich. Rainier told me that you headed back to Grigori. We did. But Shemazai had asked us to come here to Kuo to search for Azazel and Kokebiel since we're familiar with the town, Kalawarna said. She sighed. Azazel was being his spontaneous self once again. Our objective is to look for Azazel and ask him to return to the Grigori. And our second objective is to search for Kokebiel and report what he's up to. Shemazai has told us that he has defected from Grigori and is planning something. However, he wasn't sure what it was. That's not good, Issei said. He saw Rainier sitting beside her friends with a look of apprehension. So, he decided to ease her anxiety. Hey, don't worry, I'll make sure he doesn't hurt you again. Besides, you're stronger than before. I know, but that's not what I'm worried about, Rainier said. She knew that Kokebiel didn't care about anyone. I'm afraid Kokebiel would do something drastic to get what he wants. What he wants? Issei said. From the sound of it, Rainier might have an inkling of what Kokebiel is up to. Rainier, do you know what Kokebiel is up to? I know a bit, Rainier said. Kokebiel has always been angry at Azazel for entering a truce with the other two factions. He believes Fallen Angel could have won the Great War. I think he plans to restart the war. That's insane, Serafal said. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Is Kokebiel insane? Like devils, fallen angels have one of the lowest numbers and haven't grown them in a long time. However, devils have the reincarnation system using the devil pieces, but fallen angels don't have them and rely on natural birth. Is he planning to end the fallen angel race? Exactly. Azazel and Shemazai knew that it would be suicide if the war restarted, Rainier said. She was glad that the leaders had no intention of restarting the war. In fact, Azazel no longer desires war. He's more into researching sacred gear now. Hold on, Issei said. He then looked at Kalawarna and Middlet. You said that Azazel was here. What is he doing here? He felt the power of the Red Dragon Emperor awaken or something, Kalawarna said. As with the White Dragon Emperor, Azazel is interested in the Red Dragon Emperor. He wants to meet the wielder of the boosted gear. Well, damn. Issei didn't know how to tell Kalawarna and Middlet that there was no longer a boosted gear because he had already resurrected Diedrich, and they were playing with him. About that, Issei said. He looked at Diedrich, who was in the lap of Middlet. Issei then looked at Rainier, who saw that Diedrich being pet by Middlet. She was about to burst into laughter. There is no longer a boosted gear wielder because Diedrich is on your lap, Middlet. Huh? Middlet said. She then looked at her lap, and the toy moved. Diedrich flew out of her lap and perched on Issei's shoulder. I was playing with one of the heavenly dragons. Serafal wasn't as surprised as the others that the toy dragon wasn't a toy. She felt the power radiating from it when she saw him. But she was still surprised. What the hell happened while she wasn't around? Serafal didn't remember Diedrich being around back then. Ha ha ha. Issei laughed. The reaction of Middlet was hilarious. You should have seen the look on your faces. Oh, I see. It was a joke, Middlet said. She then sighed a breath of relief. You had me there for a second. It's not a joke, Issei said. He then gestured to Diedrich. This is Diedrich, the heavenly dragon of domination. Ha 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 ha. You should be glad I let you pet me, Diedrich said. He doesn't allow anyone to pet him except for Issei and his family, but he is inside the Hyodo residence. If he was to cause chaos, he would be punished, and he didn't want that. You should be glad we were inside this house. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so lucky. Diedrich then let out his dragon aura, and the four guests were afraid. Right. Issei looked at the other two guests and forgot that they were there. Who are you two? Issei said. He then looked at the girl with chestnut-colored hair. She looked familiar. You look familiar. Do you not remember her, Issei? Miki asked. She wasn't sure why Issei would not recognize his childhood friends. They were as thick as thieves back in the day. She then took out an old picture. See? She's right there. Shithu Irina. Issei took a look at the picture, and he was surprised. Shithu? He then looked at the girl and picture back and forth. You're Shithu. Issei said. Shithu was a girl. He always thought that she was a guy. Holy crap. You're a girl. I always thought you were a guy. Ha ha ha. It can't be helped. I was a bit of a tomboy back then, Irina said. She then made a cutesy smack of her head. But it seems a lot has happened to the both of us in the time we've spent apart. You really never know what will happen when you're reunited. Irina stared at Kalawarna, Middelt, Rainier, Serafal, and Diedrich. She might be smiling on the outside, but on the inside, she was a bit afraid of Diedrich. Irina wasn't sure if the dragon was really the red dragon of domination, but that doesn't matter since it's still a freaking dragon. As for Serafal, she didn't know who she was. Oh. By the way, Sarah-chan, it's good to see you again, Mickey said. It had been a while since she had been over. Mickey knew that Serafal had responsibilities. You should come by more often. Oh, I plan to, Serafal said. She then looked at the room and saw Rainier. A gut feeling told her that she was the one she needed to speak with. But for now, I have to speak with her. Serafal pointed at Rainier. Said Fallen Angel was curious. What does a devil with immense power want with her? However, she didn't mind speaking to Serafal since Issei was around. She was sure that he wouldn't let anything happen to her. Me? Why? Rainier said. She was curious. I don't think I've ever met you before. You haven't, but I still need to speak to you, Serafal said. She wanted to know if this girl was good enough for her Issei or if she was willing to share. I have a few questions that need answering. Serafal dragged Rainier into another room. Meanwhile, Issei was looking at Irina and the girl he was with. Until he had his eyes on the item wrapped in a cloth. He used Bo Bup and took the item. Irina and Xenovia recoiled at what they saw. The sword of Xenovia was quickly stolen. Issei then unwrapped the cloth and saw a sword. It was emitting a holy aura. From that, Issei can deduce that Irina and Xenovia were the church representative and were the duo that wanted to speak to Rias. He then put his hand on the sword's handle, and it hummed to life. Irina and Xenovia were confused. Issei could wield one of the Excalibur fragments. Issei. Why you can wield a holy sword? Irina said. She was shocked. Issei was a natural-born holy sword wielder. Amazing. Impossible. Xenovia said. She was the wielder of Excalibur Destruction, the sword in Issei's hand, but it was emitting more power with him than it was with her. How? How is this possible? Xenovia. Irina said. She was surprised that Xenovia was rattled at what she saw. Sure, Irina was surprised that Issei could use the holy sword, but not to the extent of Xenovia. What's got you so rattled? Excalibur Destruction is my holy sword. I know its ins and outs, Xenovia said. She still couldn't believe the amount of power the sword was producing in Issei's hands. But the amount of power that Excalibur Destruction is emitting now is nowhere near what it does with me. Well, duh. Irina said. She knew that output would be different. Of course, it would be weaker in his hands. This is the first time he's held it. Weaker? I wouldn't be this surprised if it was weaker, Xenovia said. Sometimes, Irina could be dense. The power Excalibur Destruction is producing is 5 times more power with him than it is with me. Irina was shocked. 5 times more power? What? See? Now you get it. Xenovia said. She then looked at Issei, who wasn't even impressed with the power. In fact, she saw that he was disappointed. Why do you look so disappointed? I've heard of stories of this holy sword from Serafal and Diedrich, Issei said. He then sighed. The power of the sword was disappointing. All the stories they told me, I thought it would be far more powerful than this. But I guess I was wrong. This holy sword isn't even on par with my Balmung. Issei then brought out his Balmung. A wave of aura hit Irina and Xenovia. The amount of power that Balmung was emitting was immense. Between Excalibur Destruction and Balmung, the latter was far more potent without competition. Irina and Xenovia looked at the sword that Issei brought out. They felt that their weapons were definitely inferior. This feeling was more for Xenovia, as her swords were far weaker than Issei's Balmung. Diedrich, who was in the room, became afraid of the sword. Why? Because this was the sword Issei used to beat him up. If Issei didn't have healing magic, he would be nothing more than dirt on the ground, unmoving. Why? Because Issei cut up his arms, legs, and wings during their fight. Diedrich made his way out of the room as he didn't want to be in the vicinity of Balmung. Issei, on the other hand, thought of something interesting. Knight of Honor. If he was to activate it, it would catapult Excalibur Destruction's power from its initial rank to AD rank. assuming it wasn't considered a D rank in the fate system. Issei activated his Knight of Honor, and it worked. The power of Excalibur Destruction grew, doubling its previous power. That would mean that Excalibur Destruction was only considered an E rank in the fate system as it had a value of 10. And with Knight of Honor, it was raised to D rank with a value of 20. How did you make it stronger? Xenovia said. Whatever the red and green light that was enveloping Excalibur Destruction, it strengthened it. And what's with that light? Issei ignored her. Though, he got to thinking. Xenovia said earlier that Excalibur Destruction was a lot weaker in her hands. That would mean it was less than an E rank earlier. He sighed. Truly a disappointing weapon. Issei then tossed the sword back to Xenovia. He was capable of forging weapons with a rarity of mythical grade with the Gacha System's grading system. Excalibur Destruction doesn't even come close to his standards. First, previous ch21 of 74. Next, chapter 21. The following morning, Sona was going around the school in her magical girl outfit. She tried so hard to dispel Issei's runes, but nothing she did work. Sona was trying to get to the stucco room without being spotted. Whenever Sona was seen by a student, she would grab them on the shoulder and scare the shit out of them before wiping their memory. It wasn't right to scare the people, but it was the only way she could vent. For the entire day, Sona did not leave the stucco room. One thing Sona didn't realize is that she was starting to take a liking to the magical girl outfit. Was she embarrassed to wear it in public? Sure, she didn't mind wearing them in a private place, like her home. After school, Issei was heading to the Orc, where the meeting between Rias and the church duo would occur. Since Diedrich got out of the dimensional farm, he would always be perched on Issei's head. When Issei arrived in the Orc, the church duo was still not around. That's a good thing since he didn't want them to start their conversation while he wasn't there, and a fight broke out. It took another few minutes before Irina and Xenovia arrived. Now that all parties have arrived, the talk could start. I'm Irina Shithu, Irina said. She then gestured to Xenovia. This is my partner, Xenovia Quarta. I wonder why the followers of God would want to meet with the devil. Rias said. She had her hands and legs crossed. This is quite unusual. Recently, the holy swords Excaliburs kept by the Catholic Church headquarter Vatican, Protestant Church, and Eastern Orthodox Church was stolen, Irina said. She was explaining things as calmly as possible. Of the 6 Excalibur fragments with known whereabouts, the Church still has 3 of them, but the other 3 were stolen by fallen angels. Stolen? Rias said. She doesn't care for the sword since it is harmful to her people. What does that have to do with us? The ones we have are from the ones that are left, Xenovia said. She was holding on to the sword that Issei took last night. The Holy Sword of Destruction, Excalibur Destruction. And the one that I have here, Irina said. She showed them a wrap around her arm. The Holy Sword of Mimicry, Excalibur Mimic. You didn't answer my question. So, I'll ask again, Rias said. She looked at both Irina and Xenovia with a stern look. What does that have to do with us? The problem is between fallen angels and us, Xenovia said. She didn't like devils. Just as you were saying, this has nothing to do with you. We don't need the devils in this town to intervene. So, stay away and let us do our job. Issei felt that someone was angry. It was Kiba. He was glaring at the Excaliburs and the 2 women with a scary face that Issei had never seen before on him. This is perfect. I've waited a long time for this, Kiba said. He was glaring at Xenovia and Irina. Finally, I get to enact my revenge on the holy swords that took away the life of the people I cared about. Who the hell are you? Xenovia said. She looked at Kiba and didn't recognize him. I don't think we've ever met. I'm your senior, Kiba said. He had a look of disdain on his face. My friends and I are why you all can wield holy swords. For a long time, I've waited for a day like this to happen. A day I can enact my revenge over the holy swords. Issei saw that Kiba was approaching Xenovia and Irina. Sit down. Kiba, Issei said. He didn't care for the so-called revenge of Kiba on the holy sword. It's ridiculous. Why hate a tool? It has done nothing wrong. Instead, he should hate the person who harmed his friends. Or I'll make you. No. Kiba shouted. He has waited for so long. I finally have a chance to destroy those wretched swords. I will not let it slip by me. I said sit your ass down. Issei shouted. Draconic aura erupted from him and onto Kiba. who was slammed to the ground. It was strong enough to cause the ground to crack. I warned you. I'm the mediator of this meeting. Any hostility towards either party will be dealt with. You know, it's funny how you showed hostility towards us, but not him, Zenobia said. She pointed at Issei. He is also a wielder of a holy sword. Kiba was shocked. Issei was a wielder of a holy sword. Really? Which one was a holy sword? He didn't remember any of the swords wielded by Issei as a holy sword. There was a lightning sword named Lightning Edge, there was a fire sword named Flame Emperor, but neither were holy swords. Issei sighed, and he took out Balmung. Immediately, Rias and her peerage felt the power of the sword. But unlike the Excalibur fragment, whose power is half-assed, Balmung wasn't. No, Kiba said. His mentor was a wielder of a holy sword. How? I don't understand your anger towards the holy swords. They are nothing more than mere tools, Issei said. Zenobia and Irina looked offended by his words. Mere sword? Excalibur was a testament to what a human can accomplish. If anything, you should be angry at whoever hurt you and your friends. Because guess what? A sword alone is incapable of hurting another person unless wielded by someone else. It doesn't matter, Kiba said. He was trying to get up, but Issei's dragon aura was too powerful for him to resist. One way or another, I will destroy all those holy sword, including yours. Issei stood up from his seat and went towards Kiba, who was on the ground. He placed his hand on Kiba's head and used his magic. What Issei did was trap Kiba in his strongest memory. Hopefully, that memory was on the day of the incident of whatever made him hate the holy swords. On the ground, everyone was watching as Kiba spasm, or at least what looked like a spasm. He seemed to be dreaming of something. Whatever Issei did, Kiba doesn't seem to be waking up from it. Kiba. Issei, what did you do? Ria said. She looked at Kiba and didn't know what to do. What have you done to Kiba? He's fine. Nothing is wrong with him, Issei said. He was nonchalant about the entire thing. I merely trapped him in his own mind. I was hoping that whatever made him hate the holy sword would be his strongest memory. That way, he would be able to resolve his issues with the holy sword. Kiba was in his mind. The day was when all his friends were getting killed. They were blocking the men that were killing them from getting to Kiba. His friends told him to run and live. Not only for himself but also for them. Kiba watched as the friends from long ago died. But one thing is for sure. Kiba saw that his friends didn't want revenge against the sword. They merely wanted him to live. All this time, he was out for revenge, but in truth, his friends saved him so that he could live, not only for himself but for them too. I was wrong this whole time, Kiba said. He then fell to his knees. I've wasted my time thinking about revenge, that I didn't realize none of that mattered to them. All they wanted for me was to live. Kiba reflected on his action all these years. He was grateful for Rias, but he was out for revenge the whole time. Rias was just a means to get strong enough to enact his revenge. Kiba felt horrible for this. So, he decided that he would genuinely be her sword. The memory he was trapped in seemed to have come alive. You finally understood, one of the kids said. Kiba looked at the kid. This is for the best. We never wanted you to take revenge for us. All we wanted was for you to live when we knew we weren't going to make it, another kid said. Go. It's time for you to return, another said. But before you leave, we want to give you a gift, a girl said. A sphere was then handed over to Kiba. He didn't know what it was, but he accepted it. What he was given was a trigger for his balance breaker. When Kiba woke up, Irina and Zenobia were already gone. Kiba looked at Issei and gave his thanks. Although Kiba no longer had the idea of getting revenge on the swords, he was still planning on taking down the person responsible for the deaths of his friends. When Kiba asked how long he was out, Rias told him it had been 2 days since the meeting with the church duo. This shocked Kiba. He thought it had only been for a few minutes. First, previous ch 22 of 74. Next, chapter 22. Inside Issei's house, Zenobia and Irina were having dinner. As it turns out, Irina isn't that great with money. She decided to buy a holy person painting, using all their funds. Issei was watching Irina and Zenobia eat their food. If an outsider was to look at them eat, one would think that they hadn't eaten in days. Rainier, Serafal and Asia were in another room. Asia was looking around and was thinking about why she was pulled in. Okay, tell me. How are we going to do this? Rainier said. She was all for sharing Issei as she didn't want a bloodbath. But the question is, does Issei want a harem? We don't even know if Issei is open to such a relationship. Why don't we just go and ask him? Maybe I can use my seductive body to entice Issei, Seraphol said. She was thinking of wearing her best magical girl outfit that looks sexy as heck. I can pull him into a room and tell him how I feel, and then we break into lovemaking. I don't think that'll work, Rainier said. As much as it would work for other men, it won't work with Issei. Rainier has seen how much Issei didn't like cheaters. Can't you just bring him to a room and tell him I'm okaying your relationship with him? He told me he has that weird eye thing that can tell when someone is lying. I doubt he wouldn't believe what you're saying. What am I doing here? Asia said. Though she was curious about the talk, she didn't know why she was brought into the room. Okay, she was lying to herself. I think I'm going to go and have dinner. You're not going anywhere, Rainier said. She then pulled Asia, who was about to leave the room, back to her seat. You can't lie to me, Asia. You say that this talk has nothing to do with you, but that's not true. I've seen how you look at Issei. I know how much you like him. But because I'm his girlfriend, you buried those feelings deep down. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to do that. You're part of the supernatural world. It's not uncommon for someone like Issei to have multiple spouses. I think you're mistaken, Asia said. A liar she is not. Her eyes were darting around. Clearly, she couldn't meet the eyes of the other girls in the room. I'm not. You're a terrible liar, Asia, Rainier said. She sighed. Maybe I should tell you about the time I heard you moan Issei's name in your room. Asia went red. She didn't think that she was being that loud. I wasn't masturbating to Issei. Asia shouted. She was so red that her face looked like it would pop. I. Asia couldn't say anything. Oh, I never mentioned that you were, Rainier said. She was only teasing Asia. In fact, she never heard anything. I was talking about when Issei gave you a massage. I heard you moan for Issei to continue massaging you for a little longer. Tricked. She was tricked into confessing. Asia was ready to dart out of the room, but she was being held by both Seraphol and Rainier. I need to go, Asia said. She struggled in her seat. She couldn't bear the embarrassment. I can't believe I said that. While Asia was being embarrassed, back in the dining room where Zenobia and Irina were eating dinner, Irina asked Issei a question. So, Issei? How long have you known about the supernatural world? Irina said. She was wolfing down the chicken on her plate. And also, who are the girls from the other day? I've known about the supernatural world since I was 10 years old, right after you left, Issei said. This shocked Irina. As for the girls yesterday, Middlet, Kalawarna, and Rainier are fallen angels. But you already know that. As for Rainier, she's my girlfriend. I met her about a month or two ago. I don't completely remember due to all the incidents happening. As for the blonde girl, I think you might know her. She was part of the church before she was excommunicated. Her name is Asia Argento, my foster sister. Mom even has all the legal documents. As for Seraphol, she's pretty famous. She is known as the most powerful female devil. She is Seraphol Leviathan, one of the underworlds, Satan. As for the little girl on my lap, this is Ophis, the infinite dragon god, or the Ouroboros dragon god. Irina dropped her spoon when she heard the girl's identity in the Hyodo residence. As for Zenobia, she nearly choked on her food. She was coughing badly as a piece of meat got stuck in her throat. What the hell? Ouroboros dragon, Satan Leviathan, and dragon of domination, Irina said. She was in disbelief. There were so many powerhouses in a single residence. Why are they all here? Well, for Ophis, she's here because I gave her cookies on our first meeting. Ever since then, I treated her as just another one of the family. Mom has also taken a liking to her, Issei said. He then took a spoonful of food and fed it to Ophis. She was sitting on Issei's lap. As for Seraphol, I met her during a magical girl convention. We enjoyed each other's company and became friends. A while later, I figured out she was a devil, but I didn't really care. She is a friend. So, what are you, exactly? Zenobia asked bluntly. She knew that the aura of Issei he used against Kiba wasn't human, but it wasn't a devil either. You're not human, are you? Half human, half dragon, Issei said. Irina was confused. Half dragon? How does that happen? It would make sense if one of Issei's parents were a dragon, but neither is. So, how? As if Issei was reading Irina's mind, he answered. Due to certain circumstances, I became a dragon. Though, how I became a dragon is a secret. How come you're close to the devils here in Kuo if your girlfriend is a fallen angel? Zenobia said. It didn't make sense. Devils and fallen angels don't get along. Yet, Issei, whose girlfriend is a fallen angel, mingles with devils. Especially that Satan Leviathan. For one, I have no prejudice towards any race, whether that be angel, fallen angels, devils, Valkyrie, gods, Buddha. All have their good and bad bunch, Issei said. He wasn't lying. There are good devils like Seraphal and great fallen angels like Rainier, Kalawarna, Middlet, and Akano. Heck, he even knows that angels aren't perfect. I suggest you get to know a person first before judging them. Though, if you approach them and try to kill you, that's an indicator that they're not friendly. I learned that the hard way. Issei was 11 years old back then. He approached a man that had a smile on his face. Issei knew that he was a devil but didn't mind. He looked approachable. So, Issei approached him. Long story short, the devil got away after a fight broke out between them, but at least Issei took his arm. All Issei knew about the devil was that he was a gentle-looking handsome young man with dark green hair and amber eyes. Say, Issei. Where did you get Balmung? Irina asked. The sword was different from the one that she saw depicted in books. It wasn't even close. It looks different from the one recorded by the church. Balmung was meant to be a long sword with a darkish purple color, which reached up to half the blade nearing towards the upper portion where it is silver. It has a unique crossguard, a light purple part placed onto the crossguard extending up the purple-colored fuller with a slight yellow circle in the middle, a yellow two-handed grip, and a purple pommel with light purple ornaments around it. But Issei's Balmung had none of that. Even the type of sword is wrong because Issei's Balmung was a great sword. That's because it's two different swords, Issei said. He was still feeding Ophis. Balmung in the stories is strong, but it doesn't hold a candle to my Balmung. Especially once I activate its full power. Irina and Zenobia didn't know what to think. The amount of power they felt from the sword was already intense, but it wasn't its full power. Now that's just absurd. But they can't deny that Issei was telling the truth. They saw how Diedrich was afraid of the sword. In Sona's house, Sona admired her looks in front of her mirror. She isn't a narcissist, but she likes how she looks with her clothes. Even if it was a magical girl outfit. Actually, she thinks it makes her look sexier by showcasing her curves. Sona was doing a few poses that she thinks make her look fantastic. She was wondering what Issei thinks of her body. Sona shook her head. For a while now, Sona has been thinking about Issei. She was thinking about why and when it started. All Sona knew was that it began when she saw Issei training with Kiba, Akano and Kaneko. He took his shirt off and changed to a fresh one. That's when she felt hot and bothered. But that's not all. Issei was intelligent, capable and caring, things she found attractive in him. Other than that, nothing. Thinking a bit, Sona realized that she had a crush on Issei. She shook her head and tried to take her mind off of him. Oh, my, Sona thought. She didn't know why she had a crush on Issei. It couldn't have just been her seeing his body, right? She then thought about his body, and she felt hot. I think I need to take a cold shower. Sona proceeded to take her clothes off and take a long cold shower. She hopes that it will be enough to make her body stop reacting the way it is. It was not enough. That night, loud moans would be heard throughout Sona's house. Boy, if Seraphal heard Sona moan Issei's name, she would be, well, it could go two ways. Seraphal would either be delighted, or she would put Issei through her groom training. First, previous ch 23 of 74.